All right, everyone, we should be back. We should be fixed. And it should all work because I made a stupid mistake. I found it immediately, well, like 30 seconds immediately, and we should be good to go. So we're gonna start all over again. The last stream, you know what? It didn't happen. None of that happened. This is the first time you're seeing us. Hi everyone. It's good to see you. I am Mike, the exasperated gentleman, and this is the verdict of Odin. So we are here again this week. It's good to see you guys. So we've titled this podcast "When Life Gives You Lemons." So we are back. So Odin, say something so the beautiful people can hear your fun voice.
My scrotum is super hairy.
Okay, well,
That's going to be our audio test.
that's our audio test. So I hope you all heard that and then heard some, unsettling information. So,
Like this is copied down here.
okay, so yeah, so it's like cousin it down there. Okay, just
Oh yeah.
never mind. I was going to go someplace, but
Oh, you
not
can
going
go
to.
there.
So anyway,
Yeah.
like I said before, so I was really busy at work. It's just been a really hectic week, so I haven't really had time to do a whole lot of preparation as far as topics of conversation or whatever. So Odin's kind of take the reins. That there's some things he wanted to talk about, so we can. Okay, Arthur, thank you for coming back. It's good to see you. And one of these days, I'm actually going to get good at OBS. I am too stubborn not to be. I will get good at it. I promise. So anyway, just a reminder, if you're interested in ESO streams or recorded videos, Odin, Verdict of Odin is the channel you want to go to. If you are interested in Skyrim, Fallout 4, really just single player games and modding them and whatnot, then you want to subscribe to this channel because we cover all that stuff. So anyway, Odin, I'm going to let you take it while, you know what, I just drink more.
Oh, you're gonna let me take it. So, you know what, Mike? I'm gonna tell you a story that happened today that I think will make you feel better and give everyone else a little bit of a laugh.
All right, I
So,
like
my
laughs.
wife and I go to the dog park and we're having this awesome time with our dog. And I mentioned to her, we should get some pizza. And there's this place called Papa Murphy's. They make the pizza like, raw. They don't cook it. You go and pick it up. She's like, great. So she's like, here, do you want to call them? She gives me the number to a location. I call them. I place the order. Great. When we're about to leave, she's like, oh crap, I let you order at this location that's really, really far away from us. But we can still go get it. I'm like, all right, that's fine. So there's traffic, there's construction. It takes us like, I don't know, like 20, 25 minutes to get there. It took like 25 minutes. Anyway, we get there and there is an order for Jake, which is my real name. But it's only one pizza, and it's not the one that I ordered. And I'm sitting here talking to the guy, telling him what I ordered. I'm like, are you sure? And then a woman comes over and she's like, I'm the one that's been taking the orders. I don't remember talking to you. And I'm like, let me go talk to my wife. So I go back in the car and I'm like, hey, are you sure this is the right place? And it was not. So we actually did order from the Papa Murphy's that was close to us, and yet because my wife thought we didn't, we drove like a half hour out of our way, and then it was a half hour. And
Does she need to come on and give her side of the story?
there is no side of the story. She is just funny that way, she
She's
has a
quirky.
very demanding. Yeah, she is quirky. She's a savant in many aspects and not so much in others. But I am absolutely, yeah, I'm in love with her. She's amazing. So anyway, I hope that makes you feel better. But tonight, I wanted to kind of bring about a conversation that you and I have had before, and I know that I've had in streams in the past. Is in the past years, we've talked about how the industry it didn't make a major shift, but it made a more minor, very monetized shift to games as a service, right? You remember how we had that conversation a few times, I feel.
Yeah.
Yeah. So one of the things we talked about is them kind of over monetizing and not giving enough back. And one of what I consider one of the most egregious things a game company can do is exactly what Bungie is doing with Destiny 2. Now, this isn't a new thing. They've actually been doing this for a while now, and is a massive reason why I stopped playing before they started doing this. But they started locking paid content away from players who've already played it. Now, Destiny, what Bungie claims is that it's about server stress. Not really sure how that equates to it, because Bungie is not an MMO. It's not nearly as big as an MMO. It is not as stressful from a code side as any MMO. And yet, what they are doing now, and even right now, if you go onto Steam, you go onto Xbox, you go to PlayStation, you can still buy at full price the Forsaken DLC for Destiny 2, which in about 4 days, they're going to lock away, and none of that content you will be able to access until further notice. Just like that. They're just doing it. And the really messed up thing is that on Twitter, over the last 48 hours since the announcement, there are players coming to their aid, justifying it, saying like, "Oh yeah, they told us about that," as if that makes it any better.
Yeah, not if you've already paid for it.
What the? No, that's what I mean. It's like,
Yeah.
what? World of Warcraft has been out for like 17 years, continually adds content, right? They even add legacy servers, meaning that you can play the game in an original state in a completely different area. They've never locked content. ESO, 7 years old. It adds content every quarter of every year, right? To the game. A new country, new events, new dungeons, new trial. Uh, they're doing updates like every 2 months in the game itself. Never locked away any content. Call of Duty, Warzone, not locking away any content, right? And that's not. And when it comes to Warzone comparatively to Bungie or Destiny 2, I'm sure Destiny 2 is, bigger in scope, but I'm like, I don't believe Destiny 2 has a larger player base than Call of Duty, aka Warzone right now.
No way.
I
Yeah, no way.
There's no way. So for Bungie, I think Bungie is just completely bullshitting. So let me give some background information about how I understand the situation. So a few years ago, Bungie completely shit the bed, and I called this on it. They made a deal with Activision. They left Microsoft, right? Well, they were kind of already independent for the most part, but basically they left Microsoft and they made a publishing deal with Activision. Now this publishing deal said basically you have to put out content that sells well every quarter. You have to meet these certain financial goals. Every time you don't meet these goals, we get that percentage back in stock to basically own your company. Well, guess what happened? They bit off more than they could chew with Destiny 2. They released it. They couldn't release the content in time, and Activision started getting more and more of their stock, basically. And Bungie freaked the fuck out. And so I don't know how they did it, but they were able to buy themselves out of the Activision contract. Now, at the time that this happened, Destiny 2 was supposed to be winding down because they were already working on their new IP that is not Destiny 3, not Destiny related, right? That has been completely stalled because what I think they did is they actually took out some sort of loans against I don't know what to buy themselves out of Activision, and they've basically repackaged content that they've sold as DLC for the last 2 years, right? I mean, they don't come out with new enemies. Everything's just like a reskin, and not even a good reskin. The
Mhm.
AI isn't different. There are no new abilities. They throw in, maybe a raid and a couple of campaign missions, but in order to do that, they say they have to lock away some other shit that you already paid for to keep the server stress to a minimum, which I think is complete bullshit.
And then they
So
re-release that stuff they've locked away to pay again.
I don't know if you have to pay for it again, but basically you can't access any of the events. if the RNG didn't give you the weapons or armor you were farming from that content, once it's locked, now you have no way of getting to it.
So, but the thing is, though, there
Oh,
are. Can you hear?
oh, now we just lost your audio. Did we lose mine? No,
No,
mine,
you're
mine's
good.
good.
You're good. You
Okay,
got
cool.
me. My headset just turned off. That's why I looked at it.
Oh, okay.
So even if so here's the thing. I feel like there's other games that do that kind of, like ESO. Now, like for ESO, like they'll come out with content. And I mean, Call of Duty does this too. They'll come out with content that's only available for a short amount of time. Now, granted, once you have it, they don't lock it back up.
It's never a quest, it's never a raid, it's never a country or an area. That's like if you want a player house that you can buy with real money, if you want to buy crown crates for certain amounts. So like every
Counting.
it,
Just
it
this
kind
is
of
number two.
varies. Like what's that?
Said I'm counting. This is number two. I'm just keeping everyone up to date. That's all.
Oh,
Go
okay.
ahead.
So, like, if you want a specific mount that only drops with certain crates, they will rotate those in and out because they have so much new content and new crates. They try to keep the crates up for like 3 months. And so it's from time wise, it's literally impossible for them to keep all crates up. Well, not impossible, but they can't, they want to focus on one type of crate for like a quarter basically, and then get you ready for the next one or the sale or whatever. So like right now they have some crates out that they haven't had for like 2 years. But if you buy any of those or any of the associated goods, emotes or armor styles or whatever, that will never be locked away from you. You will always have access to it when you have it. Um, no country in the area in ESO has ever been locked away. No game mode has ever been locked away, to my knowledge. They always evolve it. They always expand on it. And I I reached out on Twitter. I mean, this is like so recent. I don't think anyone's said anything, but I did ask to be like, what other game has ever done this? Where like missions and shit that you paid for, a whole DLC that you paid for, is just gone from the game.
Yeah, that's yeah, I don't know how you defend that. I'm on your side. I mean, you know me, where I will try to think of any angle I can to kind of try and give companies the benefit of the doubt.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's kind of sleazy, you know,
That
to be
yeah,
honest with
no,
you.
I looked for I'd say a couple of hours, reading articles, that go back to their original announcement, looking at how they do justify this, and that's all they've given is they've said this is for the players. Like they framed this like a shitty politician. Am I like, well, we're doing this for the good of the community, locking this away so the servers can stay up. It's like, no, no, you're not taking away something that someone's already paid for. Doesn't help them in the least.
So
Like,
there's a part of me that wants to think that like they needed money, so they like
oh yeah,
sold servers, so they like the actual server, like they sold it, and then
oh,
so now they have less bandwidth, and so now they have to shut things down in order to fit it all. Like they
that could
sold the
be.
hardware, and it's just kind of like that's the only way I could think of how they would save money. Like I can't think of just
Yeah,
having just having content up on your server in and of itself cost money other than the
right,
operation of that server.
right. And
Um,
the thing is too, and this is another thing that kind of like stuck in my craw. And I know this isn't like, I don't know if this is one mega server or not, but ESO in Europe and in Northern America, they have one mega server. Now,
mhm.
what that looks like, I have no idea. I know like World of Warcraft, Guild Wars, other online games have multiple servers at multiple locations, but when anyone in America has issues with the server, they have to do maintenance that affects everybody.
Right.
Even if it's like only Atlanta is affected, they have to. work on the entire server. The entire server is updated, not certain parts, the entire North American server. So this could be the way it's coded, the way it's hard, actually physically hardwired to get. I don't honestly know. Um, but again, even if there were multiple points, and let's say they had to siphon them off, Destiny. Now, hold on. Let me make sure before I go off and say anything. I'm actually gonna look because now that they're a private company, they may not post their profits.
Yeah, if they're not publicly traded, then they don't have to.
I'm gonna look up their net profit in 2020.
But yeah,
Let me
Activision,
see here.
if they were under the Activision umbrella, I would think they'd have to come out with some sort of reports because
Yeah,
they would be an asset of Activision, and Activision is publicly traded.
they did when they were under them, and in 2020 they were fully released, and the revenues. See exact annual revenue. Oh, maybe I can. It says the revenue is between 1 and 500 million. That's a pretty big.
Yeah,
That's a
that's
big swing. That's
that's
not exactly.
unhelpful.
Oh, this is one of those like credit reports that wants me to pay them yearly. So in 2019, get this. This is from a Bungie post. They posted this. In 2019, they made $300 million just in microtransactions. Do not fucking tell me they cannot afford the
Well,
servers.
but how many employees? Like and we had this discussion before. Like 300 million, especially to us, kind of in our normal everyday lives, sounds like a ton of money. But man, that money gets chewed up really fast. Like
Sure.
how many employees do they have? It's like, okay, well,
Uh,
we will keep the servers up, but we're gonna start laying people off.
looks like about 700.
700 people work for Bungie.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, that seems excessive.
Does it? I mean,
They
they're
have Destiny. What else do they have?
sure, but
I mean,
like they remember they made Halo. So,
but they
you
don't have
know,
Halo anymore. They have nothing to do with Halo anymore.
right, but like think about from when did they leave after Halo Reach was the last game, right? So they produced 5 Halo games over like 10 or 11 years, right?
Right, but they don't have maintenance over those games anymore. That's still
No, but what
Microsoft's.
I'm saying is like their growth of employees, probably scaled to the size and popularity of Halo over that decade or more.
Right, but we can all agree that Destiny 1 and Destiny 2 didn't have nearly the amount of popularity that the Halo series did. And
Oh, I don't know actually.
I I
I
bet it doesn't. I mean,
well, if we're looking at like Halo 4 versus Destiny 1, I don't know, but I shit. I do remember that I read a report that by the end of the life cycle of Destiny 1, it did have a higher concurrent player base than Halo did at that same time. And I believe that would have been Halo 5. Now, Halo 5 Guardians is, in my opinion, and many other people, is the weakest link in the Halo franchise.
yeah.
Um, but I do remember seeing that, and even I got Destiny 2 at launch. I thought it was a huge leg up on Destiny 1. It had this massive spike in the beginning, but I remember it kind of felt like they were making the same pitfalls as Destiny 1, and then as the DLC came out, it just started like crumbling apart.
So it's funny. This is bringing up an interesting topic because you said Halo 1, Halo 2. It's making me think of the Elder Scrolls now. And
Okay.
and this is how I know this is going to sound like a drastic change of gears.
Okay.
But there's there's a law in thermodynamics. It's the law of diminishing returns,
Hmm.
and it applies to everything from economics to food consumption to labor forces to a whole bunch of different.
Resources.
It applies
Yeah.
to everything that requires
Hmm.
energy.
Right.
um, including video games. And believe it
Hmm.
or not, liking video games and how we think about video games.
Hmm.
At what point does the nostalgia factor of older Elder Scrolls games die and Elder Scroll games have to stand on their own merit? Because you figure how many people, even though I liked Halo 3, but how many people bought Halo 3 because they loved Halo 2? I mean, I did. How many people bought
Yeah.
Halo Reach, the last one, because they liked Halo 3? I did. That's not to say that those weren't good games.
Right.
I think the only the point is, and I this just really struck me when I went back and played Oblivion, even a modded Oblivion. Is I would always say when I'd get into the conversation, what's your favorite Elder Scrolls of all time? Like my favorite Elder Scrolls is Oblivion because the story is the best, which I still believe that.
Hmm.
The voice acting is the best, which I still believe that. And and there was and the characters, like the characters were better written
Yeah.
that than any other one. And I've played all the Elder Scrolls. I started off with Morrowind, so that always has a special place in my heart because it's the one that got me out of Final Fantasy and into the Elder Scrolls.
Hmm.
um, but the thing is though, when I went back to play Oblivion, I played it and it was just like the glaring flaws just
Hmm.
just like sapped the life out of me of wanting to play that game, even
Yeah.
though the story I was still enjoying, the characters I was still enjoying. So how far can nostalgia carry a game? I guess that's really my question. um and so because I feel like with
Game or a game franchise?
I'm sorry, a game franchise. Yeah, a game
Okay.
franchise. So I'm looking at Halo, and I'm the new Halo that's coming out. You and I have talked about the new Halo. We're like, we're
Hmm.
we're really looking forward to the new Halo. We're both going to
Oh
stream
yeah.
it. We're going to stream it together. We're going to yell at each other. We're going to yell at
Hmm.
other people and just have a great time. Um, but I wonder how much of that is nostalgia, and how much of that is we actually believe that Halo Infinite is going to be a good game. And I kind of think about that like the Elder Scrolls. Now, granted, Skyrim is, for all its warts, is an amazing game.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, I don't know. It had me kind of kicking the
Uh,
tires on that because because I feel like if it's Destiny 2, how many people bought Destiny 1 because it's like, oh, it's Bungie, they did Halo, so I got to get Destiny 1. Um, yeah, so I don't know. It was just how long can nostalgia
yeah.
carry a franchise?
No, and you know what? That's I would say that like it's a multifaceted equation with so many different factors that we may not have access to exactly, like what their parameter or what their value is, because every generation more and more people are born that are exposed to, like a 10-year-old kid playing Halo 4 is playing Halo 4 because it's their first Halo, right? They
Right.
have no previous, and there's going to be a whole generation of people whose parents played Halo 1 and their kids are going to play Halo Infinite.
Mm-hmm.
And Halo Infinite, from what I have seen, has taken the classic multiplayer elements and refined them and added enough new stuff to them, even though all it is basically a ripcord. Uh, which again, like I thought it was kind of gimmicky when they first showed it off, but now that I've actually seen people playing it, I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
oh my god, that's I go back to like 1985 with Bionic Commando. I don't know if you remember that game, but that was the first game they had like a grappling hook mechanic and a 2D side scroller. And I'm like, it's nothing new. We've
Right.
seen it in so many games since then, but they put it in a first person shooter that is open world and spacey, and it worked, you know? And so I do believe, like for myself, I didn't like Halo 5. I didn't even get past the first mission. I was just disingenuous with it. I didn't like ODST. Reach was good, but I didn't like the launching pad of abilities that eventually became the core function of Destiny 1 that you saw in Reach. I didn't like it that much. So for me personally, Halo Infinite, I wasn't really excited about it until I saw people playing it in real time.
Hmm.
And it's through that that has gotten me really excited about it.
Yeah,
Um,
I was gonna say ditto to that because I wasn't all that excited about Halo Infinite either after watching like the E3 stuff and all that. But yeah, I was who was I was watching like Tim the Tatman and Doctor Disrespect and like and
mhm.
those big streamers and just kind of watching them play the alpha test and all that. And I was like, you know what?
Yeah.
I think if you get the right group of people together, that looks like a lot of fun. Like,
Oh yeah.
um,
I agree 100%.
yeah, but I'm thinking like those games, which our channels have predominantly been catering to, single player games and specifically Elder Scrolls and to a little bit lesser
Mhm.
extent Fallout. Um, how long can nostalgia carry? Because I think Elder Scrolls. See, that's the thing. Skyrim is by and large considered one of the best games of all time. Now you'll have people
Mhm.
debate that, but it's always in the conversation, especially when it's
Okay.
involved single player games. Um,
Right.
I think Fallout 4, even though it sold really well, I think the Fallout fans are a little more susceptible to being victims of nostalgia than Elder Scroll fans because I think Elder Scroll fans are a little bit newer. Like you talk to, I would bet 7 out of 10 Elder Scroll fans have not played Arena, have not played Daggerfall, and probably 5 out of 10 have not played Morrowind. So their introduction to the series was either Oblivion or Skyrim, which the mechanics are very similar.
Sure.
And so, but the Fallout franchise, most of the people that like the Fallout franchise, they've played them all. They got into it when Interplay made them, and so they've played Fallout 1, they've played Fallout 2, they've played Tactics, they've played Fallout 3, they've played Fallout New Vegas, and played Fallout 4. Um, and the sentiments around the Fallout franchise, now maybe it's just a vocal minority, but has decreased as the game's going on, especially with the Bethesda versions of the games. Now, granted, it's kind of the niche thing to just whack on Bethesda because they're successful, and most people hate other people that are successful. Um, so that's where kind of I'm wondering, like, especially with Fallout, like, and Fallout 76, obviously, most people consider that, well, that was an absolute, crap show, even though I think most people who now play Fallout 76 would say no. Now, like, if you just play out Fallout 76 right now for the first time, it's like, oh, this is actually a really good game. Um, but it wasn't that way at the start.
And so sorry, but I'm
No.
like I think that factors into the nostalgia part though is when you came into it, you know? So I'm like right there, let's use Fallout 76 as an example. I played Fallout 76 at launch and I tried for months, and the bugs and the disconnection and the way it was structured at launch broke it for me. I
Mhm.
can't go back. I can't do it. Like
I'll get
every
you to try it
time
one more time, and I will.
if I can get the game for free, I'll try it. Like if there's like some crazy sale or, there's some way of getting it, via entering a contest or tweeting something, I'll do it. But it's one of those things where it's like there's no way. Like it was just so bad. It could be the best game in the world right now and I still would not give them another dollar for it. Now, to your point
Well, you've already
though,
bought it. You don't have to give him another dollar, but I digress.
no, I don't have it on PC.
Oh, that's right. That's right. I forgot about that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing that like if I had it on console still, I'd probably give it a shot because I have a fully leveled character, but I'm like I don't have my console anymore. I only have my PC, so I'm like I'd have to buy it again.
Yeah.
Uh so, for me playing it and having that experience I think kind of broke me. And but to speak to your point though with what you're saying, how far can nostalgia get you? I was so amped up. I was ready to spend the rest of the summer and well into the fall to play the Mass Effect trilogy.
Hmm.
I No, I could not really get into it. I got to Vinmire, I think it is. It's like the second planet you get to, and I was like, God damn, in the day when compared to all the other games that were released at that time, Mass Effect was the shit.
Mhm.
Dragon Age Origins was the shit. Those are the games to play. I played them at least Mass Effect 1 I probably played about 5 times all the way through. Dragon Age Origins probably like 8 or 9 times all the way through. I've tried to go back and I'm like I can't do it. And it kind of breaks my motivation not only to play it but to play the other two games in the Mass Effect Legendary Edition. I haven't gone back, and so it's kind of like that nostalgia that was there, that was the driving force of me purchasing it, got washed pretty fast by the reality of how dated the game is, and
Mhm.
a lot of the mechanics in the first game weren't updated. It's
Yeah.
still the same old game. And so, I was really excited that Rockstar announced, their trilogy. What is it, like GTA 3, Vice City, and San Andreas are all getting remade. And I saw something on Twitter, like the official like poster for it, and I was like, this is going to be Mass Effect Legendary Edition all over again. Like, there's no way I'm going to be happy going back and playing Vice City with the mechanics and the physics of it and all that again. No way. I'll hate it. I'm like, it'll ruin it for me.
Well, the thing is, with those remakes are a perfect example of what I'm talking about in nostalgia. Because even
Mhm.
though they may do like Mass Effects, still sold really well, and
Yeah.
um, and that's the thing. They don't care if you play it; they care if you buy it.
Yep. That's true.
And I mean, that's why the anniversary edition for Skyrim is going to do really well, because
Hmm.
you're paying $50 for a fishing mechanic. I mean,
Yep.
um, and so yeah, and that's why it's interesting because it's funny that you bring up Dragon Age Origins. I'm actually watching a YouTuber play Origins for the first time all the way through, and
Oh, no way.
he's in process of doing it. I've never seen it before. I've never played Origins. I've never played the second one. I've only played Inquisition, and I loved Inquisition. It was great. I was actually thinking about modding it, doing a tutorial on how to mod it, and then
Mm,
playing it on the channel. Um, just while I wait for Starfield. Um,
yeah. So
but
if I can, just real quick, just so
yeah,
I know that I've done my due diligence for you as a friend, I have modded Dragon Age. It is a fucking bitch. I'm just gonna let you know that right now. I deleted both my mod managers. I deleted all the mod files off my computer. They are no longer in there. But when I load up the game, they're still in the game. I shit you not.
so they baked in essentially.
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
that's interesting. Here's the reason why I also thought it. So I have this tool on YouTube that if I go and I type something in the search bar, it tells
Uh-huh.
me how much content has been made on that subject and how many people are searching it.
Hmm.
And so a lot of people are searching for content on how to mod Dragon Age Inquisition,
Mm-hmm.
but there's a lot of demand, not a lot of supply.
Yeah,
Um,
I only saw 2 channels that kind of specialized in it.
yeah, so I was thinking about, you know what, throwing darts at the dartboard. Why not just try it out and see what happens,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
but but the thing is that like I've been watching Dragon Age Origins, and the story has just like, you're right, man. The
Oh.
graphics are rough, even though he has
Oh.
a texture pack installed.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, I'm just watching, and I'm watching the character. I'm watching the banter between the characters in your party, and it's just like,
Oh yeah.
man, that is first class right there.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely first class. So I'm really digging it. It almost makes me want to play it, but I'm like, I won't be able to get past the mechanics. I know I won't. So I'll just watch
It's
this.
it's
I'll
pretty
watch this guy
rough.
play it.
And on PC, I don't think there's controller compatibility, like full controller compatibility. You can get like XPatter, but
Hmm.
it's awkward. It's super awkward.
Yeah, it was the same way with Oblivion. Like I got it to work with controller, and I got it to work pretty
Yeah.
well, but there were still some
Yeah.
things about it that were like,
Mhm.
If I push diagonal on my control stick, it just stops. Like,
Yep.
my character just stops, and it's just like, "Oh,
Yep.
man, come on. You're killing me." Um, but the thing is, how many like, when Drag even though BioWare's been kind of in the pooper,
Ugh.
thing is, though, when Dragon Age 4 comes out,
Mhm.
tell me that's not gonna win tell me that not going to win, tell me that doesn't have the inside track to win Game of the Year, just because of
Uh,
the name.
no, I would have a couple of years ago, I would have agreed with you,
Mhm.
but watching Sekiro beat Death Stranding, I don't agree with that anymore. I really do think that it is a more independent process and less is put on the value of who made it or directed or created it than maybe in the past. Now, don't get me wrong, like if BioWare makes Dragon Age 4 anything close to the greatness of Inquisition, I think it has a fighting chance because there have been so few RPGs released or that are going to release in the next year or two that I think are even in the same game as Dragon Age. If do you know what I mean by that?
Mhm. Yeah, I do.
Like there's a lot of independence, there's a lot of PC only old school RPG games or um old Japanese RPG turn-based games coming out on PC constantly, but it's not they they have a lot of elements of what made those games good in the past, but I'm trying to think how to phrase this. Like if we could ignore like imagine a world that Anthem and Mass Effect Andromeda didn't happen, right?
Yeah.
And BioWare didn't dissolve. I think that based on their talent pool and based on, this is a continuation of a story that has already proven great with characters that are already, so beloved. I mean, if the Iron Bull doesn't show up in Dragon Age 4, I'm going to be kind of pissed. I mean,
Yeah.
he is like he is probably my favorite character and the only character I really want to see. I know there'll be a couple others because of how the storyline went, but he is really the only companion that I'm like, I really need him to be in Dragon Age 4. If not, that's going to be like an automatic 7 out of 10 before I even play the game in my mind.
Yeah, and it's funny. That's the shame about BioWare because you know what? They were Bethesda before Bethesda.
Oh yeah,
And,
absolutely.
or maybe not they weren't Bethesda before Bethesda because I think Morrowind
I know
came
what you
out
mean by
before.
that
But
though.
yeah, but you know what I
Yeah.
mean? And I think it's just
Oh yeah.
it's a shame that they went the track that they did because you know, you figure more Elder Scrolls took off once there was two no, three games, well, two and a half. You know,
Mhm.
because the one with the not Akaviri, uh the pirate guy, I don't count that one. It's like a half game. Um but they had two before Morrowind came out, they had 2 to 3 games to build lore on. And then
Mhm.
Morrowind, when they finally actually said, okay, we're going balls to the wall here, it's go broke or go home, we're putting all our eggs in
Yeah.
this basket. Um, there was so much rich lore to build off of that
Mhm.
Morrowind just felt so immersive, especially for the time. It wouldn't feel immersive now just because the
Sure.
technology isn't there. But it felt so immersive for the time and unlike anything we've ever played that I really think Dragon Age, I think still could, but could have been that. It could to that extent.
And
Um,
again, I got to interject real quick. I'm like, this is what happens when you deal with Activision. They were remember it was
are they
after
Activision or EA?
Oh shit, EA. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yes, EA. So EA and Activision are somewhat synonymous.
Yeah.
EA's reputation has been kind of almost forgotten by this generation because of like Activision has been slowly killing Call of Duty and their other franchises slowly with microtransactions. But if you remember back in I want to say 2009, 2010, you could not go on the internet without seeing an article talking about or comparing EA to the Death Star of the gaming world, because they were just eating up companies left and right, and they were doing what Activision and a lot of major publishers do now. If you do not make a game that sells, doesn't matter how good it is, we are dissolving your company. We're going to put it on the chopping block, and
Yeah.
we're going to put who we think best to our other studios that are making games that we think are going to be more successful. And this all that happened years before BioWare made the deal with them, and they did it anyway because they, the people who owned it at the time were like, we want a payday. We don't really give a shit about the longevity of the company. We're going to sell it out, and they did. And that's why we have Mass Effect 2, and it's, Mass Effect 2, Dragon Age 2, the lore's there, but when you look at the gameplay, both games made the exact same mistake. They tried to streamline the mechanics and the RPG elements for the masses. And that's one of those things where because of how well they sold, the publishers and the higher ups, the brass said, "Oh, that worked." It was only after it was like basically reviewed by the community, before reviews were out, like, a month before the game came out, by 20 people on YouTube or Twitch. They were like, no, this is probably the most hated part of the game, is that you streamlined you dumbed it down. And they, both with Inquisition and Mass Effect 3, they tried to come back a little bit and be like, okay, we understand the mistake, we're going to try to find a happy medium. I, it's okay. I mean, you're never going to be 100% satisfied with that sort of thing, but it's just one of those things when a smaller company that's making really good games decides to do their whole payday payout, after releasing one or two good games, you can almost kiss the franchise goodbye in terms of quality.
Shadow just made a really good point. BioWare
Mm.
made the deal with EA in 2008, which was a
Oh,
year before Dragon Age Origins came out. Origins came
did
out in
they?
2009.
Oh, okay. So that wouldn't really have affected then. That like
So yeah, that wouldn't affect maybe the development of Dragon Age
right,
Origins. It may have just
right.
affected the polishing and the marketing. But definitely
Yeah.
Dragon Age 2, which I haven't played, but I, at least from what I've heard, is largely considered the best Dragon Age.
What?
Really?
Shut the fuck up.
So okay, maybe I have that confused with Origins. Sorry. Maybe I have that confused.
Oh, okay. I'm like, oh
How dare
lordy.
you, sir?
Jesus, where is my pearls? I am clutching them.
Cast them before swine.
Seriously.
But things, Inquisition was good. And a lot of the Mass Effects came out post 2008, right? I haven't played any of the Mass Effects.
I don't remember when one came out, honestly.
Well, that's
But
man, dude.
like, it's very similar. So Dragon Age Origins and Mass Effect 1 are very similar in that they are they're the heaviest in the franchise when it comes to the RPG mechanics and your ability to craft your own character and specialize them in the way that you want to.
So Mass Effect 1 came out in 2007, so that was before EA.
Okay.
But Mass
Yep.
Effect 2, which I believe most people
Only a few years
consider
later.
is good. Most people think Mass
Oh yeah,
Effect 2
no,
is
no, no,
good.
it's
Is
the
2010.
story was,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's 2010. So that was, so you EA had a hand in Mass Effect 2 because they had
Yeah.
already acquired them for 2 years.
And
Um
and if I might, like, I bought all the Dragon Age games, all the Mass Effect games at launch. I read up on them. I read the reviews when I was still doing that before a game. Um, Mass Effect 2 story was appropriately akin to uh The Empire Strikes Back, right? It's this kind of impossible scenario that doesn't have a necessarily happy ending, right?
Hmm.
It's very bleak. It's very it was written so well. I mean, Martin Sheen, oh my god, like that dude should be in every fucking video game until he dies.
Martin Sheen was in it. I love Martin
Yeah, he's
Sheen.
like he's like one of the main characters in, yeah, like dude. Like if you don't, but here's the thing though, if you don't play, I really believe that if you don't play Mass Effect 1, which um I still like Mass Effect 1 story a little bit better than 2. Like don't get me wrong, 2 is fucking amazing, but Mass Effect 1 story was so original. I mean, there was nothing like it that had come out before. There may be inklings of other games. There may, they may have like taken a side story from something they had previous in Baldur's Gate or whatever previously, but there was just nothing like it. Um, and I don't know that Mass Effect 2 would make sense if you don't play Mass Effect 1, in all honesty.
Hmm.
Like, I feel like you'd be doing yourself a real big disservice.
Oh,
And
that's
to
good to
not,
know.
yeah, and not be able to make the comparison between how the games play, because people forget, they get rosy glasses looking at the past and looking at Mass Effect 2. It launched with a lot of issues with combat. People hated the streamlined. I mean, it was so streamlined. We went from like, I think 10 or 12 categories of RPG leveling to 4. Like they just butchered it, and
Yeah,
they tried to make the action take over for it. And there was a lot there anyway, but sorry, I'm going on. But like people forget that these games launch with a lot of issues, and
yeah,
this I think when looking back at franchises, like you said, with Oblivion, with Morrowind, and even with Skyrim, like I got asked the other day, like 2 days ago, someone, commented on an ESO video I posted, like, hey, are you ever going to go back to Skyrim? And I said, honestly, I'm probably not going to play Skyrim again. Even if, even with the free upgrade and the fishing mechanic, I'm like, I have no desire to go back because I have done pretty much everything I think I can stand to do 27th time. There's nothing in any of the new creation content that you could get that I think is worth buying. And it's just not worth my time to go back and mod it and try and play it again. Especially when my motivation is so low. It's almost de snake eating itself sort of demotivational factor, you
Y-
know?
yeah. It's well, that's the thing with I think most people that still play Skyrim. I'm going to equate Skyrim and Bob Ross. Two things that I love.
Okay.
Meaning, it will make sense at the end.
Yeah, better.
It will. So Skyrim at this point, I'm not going to say no one. Very few people play Skyrim unmodded. When they mod
Hmm.
Skyrim, they're not playing Skyrim. What they're doing is they're painting a picture. They're painting a
Yep.
picture and they're making Skyrim a world that they love into the image of their own creation. And
I agree.
and so when they play Skyrim, they're not playing Skyrim anymore because there's so many
Mhm.
mods and so much diversity. You're not playing Skyrim. It's almost like you're playing a game that even though there's a foundation there that is of someone else's canvas, you're
Mhm.
painting over top of it and you can almost create your own game without having to create your own game. And
I
that's
gotta
why
I gotta
people
stop you right there.
okay.
Hold on. That that connection, that sort of like insight that you just said in connection to Bob Ross was probably the most brilliant fucking thing you've ever said.
I don't
I
know
mean
to take
that.
that as a compliment or
No,
a
I
slight.
mean, no, I take it as a compliment because I think you're a fucking moron. I mean, no, that was, I could not have come up with something more spot on than that analogy. That's like perfect.
Yeah, but that's the thing. Like Bob Ross, like if you ever watch Bob Ross, and there's a
I do.
documentary on Netflix about Bob Ross, it's
Yeah.
heartbreaking. Like if you ever watch it and you just like are in the mood to like seriously cry, like I'm a grown freaking man. I
Wait,
watched
about him?
about him and the company and the Bob like that chant and like all that.
Oh,
Man, it's
really?
man, the way he was screwed over. Oh, it's just it's
No
terrible.
shit.
Yeah, man,
I had
it's
no idea.
terrible. So essentially, sorry, this is going to be a tangent, but I feel like I have
Oh,
to say it. So him and his wife and another couple went in and created this company. You know, this painting company or whatever where he would
uh-huh.
paint and they each got a vote, of how the company should go. The His wife died of cancer,
Oh,
but he couldn't get out of the operating agreement of the company and he was always outvoted by the other couple. So Bob Ross, who was the star of the show, the talent who, come on, everyone loved, he was
right.
constantly pushed around by this other couple who took advantage of the fact that his wife died. It's
What?
just
Wait, how did they push him around? I'm a little confused
because they
on
could
this.
always outvote him.
Wait, vote him on like what? What
The
do you mean?
direction of
Like,
the company. You'll have to what if you're
okay,
that interested, watch. I don't want to
I am.
create too much of a thing, but if you or your, I mean, because your wife, I think your wife's my age, so she'll remember Bob Ross too.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
if that's something that watch it. It makes you love him all that much more, and just makes you really sad for him.
Oh man, that
But
sucks.
um, but anyway, so but the thing is though, he paints a painting, he hangs it up on a wall, or or whoever's painting with him paints the painting, hangs it up on a wall, but then you do it. The joy isn't in the looking at the painting. The joy isn't in the playing through Skyrim. The joy is making the painting. The joy is creating the load order. The joy is then you see
Yeah,
the load order you created. You walk around Skyrim, you get 10
yeah.
hours in, but then you scrap it and you start all over again. It's like, you know what? I want to make a different painting now because I've seen this painting. I'm going to hang it on the wall. That's why Skyrim is what it is.
That's seriously, dude. That's fucking brilliant. No, I'm serious. Like, I'm not fucking around.
No,
Like,
I believe you. I agree with you.
that.
I think it is brilliant.
Yeah, no, you should take full credit for that. I mean, those people, like, I feel sad for the hundreds of millions of people living on this planet that don't know Skyrim and are not going to get that analogy because that might be the most perfect analogy to why people continue to play Skyrim so obsessively. You're absolutely right. And that's all I did towards the end. I didn't even play the game. Like, I would just play for the load orders.
Yeah, um and that's where like my brother will make, he loves Skyrim. He plays it all the time. Um
Hmm.
but he'll come up, but he's like, "Man, you spend more time you spend more time
Yep.
creating the load order than you do painting. Like, I
Yeah.
don't even get it. You're not even enjoying the game." And I said,
Right.
I'm not it's not about playing the game. I'm
Mhm.
painting now."
Yeah.
And the first time I said, because that's what I said to him, and he was like, he looked at me like I was high, and I don't blame him for looking at me like that. But then I gave him the same analogy I just gave you, and he's like, I still think you're stupid, but I get it at least.
No, man,
um
oh, that's so good. Um, one thing, so I'll give you a little insight. I've been thinking about this a lot, and I've been thinking about this for years, trying to figure this out. And I don't know if it's just one of those things where I'm making a correlation where there is none, only because I'm looking for an answer and I can't find one. But for me, y- I love so many games, and I'll use Death Stranding and Dragon Age or Inquisition as a perfect example. I have beaten neither one of those games. Purposely, I haven't beat them. In Dragon Age Inquisition, I have done everything in the game, all the DLC, and I've gotten up to the last mission, and I stopped. And I've done that several times. With uh, Death Stranding, I've done it a couple times too, and now I'm waiting for the director's cut to come to PC. And I was trying to figure this out. I do this with a lot of games. Far Cry 5, I did it. I've never beaten the game. I'll go back and play it
oh
and
dude,
do
you
that.
need to beat the
Never
game.
beaten it. No, I know. So here's I've been trying to figure this out because I do this with a lot of games. I've been doing it for years and I couldn't figure it out. Why do I have this problem of letting go?
Mm.
And I was thinking about this and I think I know the answer, but I'm not 100% sure. Growing up, I I think like a lot of kids, I got into reading fantasy novels. I started off with the Dragon Age novels. Because I couldn't relate to other kids. I didn't know why at the time. I just couldn't. And so, those novels growing up, I mean, I remember going to the bookstore every weekend, even though, it takes years to write a book, asking the guy, "Hey, is the new Dragonlance out? Hey, is the new Dragonlance?" Every weekend. Like I had no concept of how long it would take. I just knew that I needed to read it. In those books, and I'm not going to say which one, but like one of the most beloved characters dies. As in most fantasy books they do. But I remember as a kid, it hit me so hard. I remember I threw the book across my bedroom and like I cried myself to sleep knowing that he died. And I didn't pick up the book for like a week. I was so angry. And this is God, I must have been like, you know, 9, maybe 10 years old, something like that. But I remember like as I got older and I started getting emotionally invested as games started to become more like interactive books
Hmm.
that I didn't want to let go. I didn't want to know the end because I knew that if I finished it, if I played it again, I knew everything that was going to happen. And so the games that I enjoy the most, I purposely don't finish so I can always go back and be like, I have a reason to play this. I can go back and there's things about this game I don't know.
It's funny that you bring that one. You said interactive books, and my wife did not. She didn't play video games growing up. Her whole household didn't play video games growing up. That's just not
Hmm.
the environment that she grew up in. And so when she met me and we were dating, and then got engaged, and then got married, she didn't understand
Hmm.
my enjoyment of video games, and not obsessiveness, but just my extreme hobby. It didn't cross the point of obsessiveness, but
Okay.
and she just didn't understand, and we just started talking
Sure.
about it one date night, and I forget what we were like shopping or something like that, and I was just saying, and I was just describing to her, oh, because we were talking about Lord of the Rings, which is going to be a caveat to another point,
Oh,
is and
okay.
I'm like, because she enjoyed the Lord of the Rings movies, she enjoyed the books, and it's just like, the thing is though, that's why I love these type of games, because they're interactive books. They're books with moving pictures that I control, but I'm still
Hmm.
thinking. I'm still trying to diagnose, and at least
Yep.
games back then, and play detective and think my way through things. And how am I going to solve this problem? It's the same thing. It's just there's a screen in front of you, but you're still
Right.
reading dialogue. You're still interacting with
Hmm.
characters. You're still engaging with your mind. You're still doing all those things. Unfortunately, games nowadays have been so dumbed down. It doesn't require nearly as much of that.
Hmm.
Um, but but I had that same reaction, bringing up Lord of the Rings. I read the books. I've read the Silmarillion. I'm a huge Lord of the Rings
Oh
fan. I've
wow.
watched documentaries on J.R.R. Tolkien and how he created the landmarks that he did. I love it. And so, I mean, I love it pretty much to the extent of learn. Like, I stopped short of learning Elvish, but really everything before that I've done.
I never
um,
knew that.
yeah. Um, Except I know, like, but I know what languages he combined to make Elvish.
Oh
Because there
yeah.
are actually
I,
there are two or three languages in the real world that he combined to make the Elvish. In
wasn't it like Dutch,
it was
German, and
it
Norwegian?
was
Swedish?
Finnish,
Finnish.
Swedish, and
Swedish.
there was one more. I forget what it is. But anyway, I remember going to the movie because I'm a visual person. That's how I take everything in.
Mm-hmm.
So I remember going and watching the Fellowship of the Ring, and it was great. I loved it, even though there were things about us like, oh, that's not in the book. They should have included it, as all book
Yeah.
people do. But I still enjoyed it. Um, and then the Two Towers came out. I love the Two Towers because for they made it dark and dire, which
Yeah.
just movies just don't do, because they like to whitewash not whitewash in the race sense, but whitewash in the sense of just make it light and accessible, kind of like video games
Right.
nowadays. um and then Return of the King came a couple years later. I was so excited for Return of the King, and started and in the theater watching it for the first time. We were watching Return of the King, and when Sauron's tower collapses because the ring was destroyed, it got me. I felt a little something in the chest. It was a little emotional,
Yeah.
but it was kind of like okay, and it went black after Sam and Frodo were on the rock. But then it was like, is it over? And this trilogy was obviously years in the making.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but then it kind of reappears with Gandalf coming down on the Eagles and rescuing them and yada yada yada. But then it, eventually gets to a scene where Aragon is crowned king. And I know these are
Mm-hmm.
spoilers, but it's been out for 15 years, so you haven't seen it. It's on you. But read the books first. Um, and he's crowned king. And there's this scene where everyone is bowing down to Aragon, the most
Mm-hmm.
heroic. And J.R.R. Tolkien was a Christian, so there's obviously a lot of Christian overtones in the book.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like C.S. Lewis's books. um, and Aragon is kind of the, for lack of a better term, the Christ figure in the story. um, and so he's crowned king, and he comes down in Minas Tirith with with all the people, and everyone's bowing down, and he catches the four hobbits out of corner of his eye, and he starts walking towards the hobbits. And the hobbits are standing. Now, it doesn't look like they're standing because obviously they're shorter than everyone else, and everyone else is bowing, so they kind of blend in. Um, and then the hobbits start to kneel, and Aragon stops them and
Mm-hmm.
says, "You bow to no one," speaking of himself.
Mm-hmm.
And he bows to the hobbits, realizing the fact that what no one else realizes is that it's the hobbits that were the true saviors of Middle Earth.
Right.
Um, and as soon as that happens, in the middle of the movie theater, I just started crying.
I did too.
Not because there was anything particularly. There was something moving about the
I
scene because humility is
oh
moving, but what made it the most moving was the fact that this long saga that I've read as a child, I would have, while I was reading those books, I'd be like, man, I'd love to just see this. And now
mm-hmm.
I'm seeing it. But the thing is, though, now the seeing is over. And it was
Yeah.
that sense of completion that was both satisfying and tragic all at the same
Mm-hmm.
time. So that was a really long story for me to say I know exactly what you're talking about.
Um
um,
I
God.
gotta say, like, even though it came out 15 years ago and I've watched it innumerable amount of times, I've got at least four versions of it on Blu-ray, the director's cut, the original cut, all that shit. The Even though I know every word of every sentence that's going to be uttered at the end of Return of the King, I well up
Mhm.
every single time I watch it. And that scene that you talked about is like, if I hadn't broken there or before it, that's the breaking point that I
Yeah.
like tear up
Yeah.
every time.
And you know what? And it's fun. We've talked about this before. We've talked about it just you and me in private, and we've talked about it on this podcast. And I think it's one of the things that the Western world has lost, which I think is a huge shame. Um, because what that scene depicts is an ultimate display in humility. And humility is exceedingly attractive and moving. And it's even more moving nowadays because it's so rare.
Hmm.
And just, and I know I brought up this analogy, but the reason why jewelers put diamonds on black felt backdrops is because it makes the diamond sparkle all the more. And that's
Right.
what humility looks like in our culture nowadays because it's so rare. Pride. I'm a prideful person. Pride has become a virtue and not a vice. Um, and but that's why humility just it brings grown men to tears
Hmm.
because it's humility isn't weakness. Humility is strength restrained. And that's what you see in that scene. And it's
Yeah.
awesome. It's awesome. Um,
Yeah.
so anyway, sorry, that's my soliloquy.
No, you know
Um,
what? Yeah, sorry, I'm going to go off on a tangent because it's ironic that you bring this up, and I didn't know this about you. I just listened to one of Tolkien's last interviews on YouTube the other night.
really?
I think it was like Tuesday night. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and it's funny that you said that there's a lot of Christian overtones in the books and whatnot because the and I think I posted it to Twitter if you want to look at it. It was this week. It's a really good interview, and it's funny the guy the interviewer brought it up about the Christ analogies, and Tolkien was like, it wasn't meant to be direct, like he
Right.
wasn't conscious of it during the time, and
Right.
the interviewer wasn't talking about Aragorn as the Christ figure. He was actually talking about Frodo as the Christ figure of bearing the cross of the weight of the ring and
Mm-hmm.
knowing that it would be his death, but it was for pretty much everyone else. And Tolkien kind of was like, I can see how you're making that point, but it wasn't what I was going for. But it was just
Yeah.
interesting that the interviewer back in like, I don't know what year he died, but I think it was like a year or two before he died.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, picked Frodo, and that's what I would have picked too. I like I laid that analogy out for myself when I first saw it. I was like, oh, this
Yeah.
is, you know, a very like, what do you call it? Oh, I can't think of the right word, but you know how like in mythology, like the sacri like, trying to think of what they call it.
The sacrificial lamb.
Yeah, because like it's the same story as like Hercules. Hercules is, father is God, his mother is not, and he sacrifices himself for the good of, what
To
do they?
protect
God damn it!
mankind from titans.
Right, right, right. But
Yeah.
he actually goes down into Hades for 3 days. He defeats,
Right.
the devil at Hades, and then he ascends to Mount Olympus and all that. Like, it's one of those things like I forget what it's called, but it's like there's a certain theme that you see in a lot of religions that like I when I started studying it, I'm like I didn't realize how much you see it in our folklore. This sort of the let's go with the sacrificial lamb idea. It's like it's such a quality that we look for. It's almost
Mm-hmm.
like we try to like I almost feel like in today's society people try to force it. They have this like persecution complex, almost like they need
Yeah.
to be that, when they're not. They just like
Right.
that's
Well, yeah.
that's their like hubris, right? They're like, I'm sacrificing myself for a greater cause, and you're like, shut up.
Yeah, it's funny that you bring that up. So I would agree that in Lord of the Rings, and I know we've kind of switched gears, but that's okay. I find this conversation exceedingly interesting. Um,
Yeah.
it's not as overtly Christian as, say, like Chronicles of Narnia,
Oh
where
no, no, no,
where
no, not
like
at
you
all.
have Aslan, who is obviously the
Right.
Christ figure being
Oh,
sacrificed on the stone table.
yeah.
For the sake of not Peter, his younger brother. Um, I was about to say Paul, but it's not. I was thinking Peter, Paul, and Mary. Not Paul. Whatever the younger brother's name is. I'm kind of ashamed of myself for not remembering that. My wife is probably watching this, and as soon as I leave, she's like, "It's this name, you idiot." um, but so it's not overtly as that, but the reason why I wouldn't peg Frodo is that because Frodo, even though he was the one who was carrying the burden, which is
Hmm.
exceedingly Messiah complex. He was not the
Messiah, that's what I was looking
Yeah,
for. Sorry.
he is not. But thing is, though, he had to be carried there by Sam.
Yep.
which would not be a biblical theme at all.
Right.
And Aragorn was the king who was exiled into the world,
Hmm.
which would depict in my in in my opinion, the incarnation of Christ into the world, and then he died and became anew, and then what you know. Um,
Yeah.
so, but anyway, I agree with you that as far as we look for these messiahs, and now this day and age, when we look for those things, we look for those things in ourselves. I'm the Messiah, which is why a
Uh-oh. Oh, dude, you cut out. You cut out.
I'm back. I'm
Oh,
back.
you're
Don't
like,
worry. No,
there we
I'm
go.
back.
Okay.
I'm back. I'm
Go
back.
ahead. Go, 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 go.
Which is what because I mean, there's a reason why there's an actual psychological complex called a Messiah complex. Like that is a
Yeah.
diagnosable thing. Um, which it's not a wonder why this day and age, when we look in stories or songs or pick fill in the blank, we
Right.
one look for ourselves and two look for the savior. Elder Scrolls is a prime example, um with the exception of Oblivion, which is why I think Oblivion's story is
Hmm.
so great, because you're not the savior, you're
Right.
not amazing, Martin's the savior.
Right.
So even looking at things like Oblivion, there is a Christ or messianic figure in Martin. um but we look for those things, but we immediately look for those things in ourselves, which is funny. And then we wonder why there's no humility in our culture, because
Yeah.
we think we're the savior, we're the hero, we're the savior of
Yeah.
the day. It's like, no, man, you're a mess just like everyone else. Like,
Yeah.
you're a mess, I'm a mess, we're all a mess. um we can't save anything. um and so it's no wonder to me, as we were talking about humility, um why there's a lack of humility this day and age, is because we're constantly looking for we have the Messiah complex about ourselves. And it's
Mm.
just like, nah, man, I hate to break it to you, but you're not the Messiah. Like, you're not the
Yeah.
savior of your own universe. I hate to, you're not, because the reality is that human beings in general are screwed up. We're messed up, and yeah, I mean, anyway.
No, no, no. There's a saying from a fuck. I'm not gonna remember. He's a Japanese Zen Buddhist, right? And you know, he said people think they're real, and you are real, but you're not really real. And
Exactly.
so what he would talk about is that like the conception of death, right?
Hmm.
Everybody knows that they are going to die on some level, but they don't really know it. They get distracted by things in life. And even if like friends and family are dying around them, they don't let that sink in, and they think it's not, they think like reality in the human mind, for reasons unbeknownst to me because I'm not a psychiatrist. They think that they are in the matrix, for a lack of a better analogy, that everyone is happening to them, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I got you. Yeah.
Like the world is happening to them, instead of like the world is just the world, and you are just one part in it, and the world and nobody else gives a shit about you. It's like you are an inconsequential bit to it. And I think that when people see other people with the perception that they're not inconsequential, they think that they somehow like take that. Like if someone, like what was that report that Facebook leaked where it talked about, Instagram created like documented cases of body dysmorphia in like a third of the teenage girls that used it,
Yeah.
right? Because it is this false fake idea
Hmm.
where when we see picture, like we just see pictures, we know nothing about this person, we like zero information, nothing, and but if we see pictures, we create this narrative of their life and create this idea that that is somehow entitled to us in some way or another, that we
Yeah.
deserve this fake life that doesn't even exist. It's just literally information processing in our brain. That's all it is. It's just a thought. It's nothing more than that. But people create these realities and narratives in their life based on that.
But
And
isn't
it's
that why people, especially when you consider the demographic of video games and single player video games, isn't that what people who play those games are searching for?
I think it can be a driving force. So like for me personally, like I said, like as a kid, like I'm autistic. I have Asperger's. I didn't know that growing up, right? And my parents didn't know that, and they didn't know how to deal with that. And kids don't know how to deal with that. So, what you get is like in group, out group. I was the out group. I was one of like, like in grammar school, my school wasn't that big, but it wasn't small either. And so there was about a group of like 5 or 6 of us in the same age range that we were kind of the outcast because we didn't know how to communicate what would be normal, right? We
Hmm.
didn't know where like social boundaries were. When we got interested in something like video games, we get into it with such a passion
Right.
that it's almost all consuming. And I think that there are various reasons that that can drive people to video games in both a healthy and unhealthy manner because I mean, in all honesty, I don't know about you. I think life, like the act of existing, sucks. It does. I mean, I'll use Mark twain where someone asked him about dying and he's like, you know what, oblivion didn't bother me before I was born, it's not going to bother me when I'm dead.
Hmm.
And that's always stuck with me. I heard that when I was like a teenager, and I was like, it clicked something in me that has like perpetually grown, that it's like most people, don't make that much money. We aren't taught how to make good decisions early on because, for whatever set of circumstances in our life, but the majority of people in the world existing is literally suffering. Again, not to tie it to a Buddhist sort of thing, but I'm like, we are in this point where social media and advertising basically dictates to us what we need, right? Even news stations, what you need to know at 6 o'clock. I'm like,
Right.
I don't need to know shit. Nothing you say, I need to actually know, right?
Yeah.
But it's like this constant cycle. And so I think video games is a way of saying, like, you can do whatever you want. You can leave, just like a book, just like a movie, just like a TV show.
Hmm.
You
It's
can leave
escape. Yeah.
all the stresses of this world behind and you can be happy for a few hours a night, you know?
Yeah. It's funny that you said, but when we talk about, well, what's causing that? What's the root, of that issue? And it's funny. And if I have any subscribers that are watching this, you're probably gonna unsubscribe at this point if you've made it this far. It's intellectual laziness. And when I say it,
Mm,
what I mean by that is, I don't have to decide for me what I need to know. I think one of the
okay.
greatest disservices that the school system has done in this country is cease to teach logic. Logic used to be a subject just like math, science, English, or whatever that the school system would teach. It taught you not what to think, but it taught you how to think. It taught you how to um, think critically. It taught you how to
Mhm.
break down the evidence. It taught you how to have debates with people. Not that you and we aren't really having a debate tonight, but you and I have definitely had our fair share of debates because we don't see eye to
Oh,
eye
sure.
on several subjects. Um, but like I think it's one of the things that has convinced my wife and I to homeschool our children instead of
Hmm.
sending them to public school, because you can't cram garbage down the throat of children who have been taught logic, because they've been taught logic. Um, and so, and I think that's one of the things that unfortunately people, and I'm a public school person, so I wasn't taught logic. So don't be offended if you went to public school or anything like that. I went to public school, um, so I get it. I'm one of those people who weren't taught those things. Um, but um, but the thing is, though, in the public school, they don't teach you independent thought. They teach you dependent thought, which is one of the things that makes you, like you said, check out the news at 6. What you need to know. No, no, no.
Hmm.
You don't decide what I need to know. I
Hmm.
decide what I need to know because I'm an intelligent, free man, free woman that can decide on their own what they need to know and what they don't need to know. You in the TV, you on the radio, you on the internet, you don't dictate to me. And I think that's one of the things that's I think it's for a lot of reasons, but I think it feeds that intellectual laziness that
Hmm.
specifically the public school system has fostered that culture, because all I'll say is this: the school system has now gone over to indoctrination as opposed to teaching. And I believe the numbers would bear that out, but that's a different conversation for a different day. Um, And I think one of the symptoms of that is we don't teach logic anymore. Just believe what we tell you to believe because we'll tell you all that you need to know. And it's just like, man, if you believe where the US ranks as far as standardized testing in the industrialized world, man, it should make you ask some serious questions.
Well, and
um,
so if I might, I don't disagree with you actually on this point because, and again, I can only speak anecdotally for myself. My wife is a decade younger than me, so she might have a different experience with this. But yeah, in the public school system, now a huge part of this is because I'm autistic. I Schools teach you to get a good grade on a test, right? That's standardized testing is why, like my generation and probably more to my parents' generation, why they were taught that way, that they weren't taught logic and how to disseminate information, how to process it, and how to fact check it until college. Because up to the point of college, they thought that all you needed to know was like, just to memorize as much as possible to get as high a score as you can on the ACTs. Then you get into a good college and you learn how to disseminate all the information. And that was kind of my overall experience
yeah.
because even as a little kid, I didn't understand, like, in my parents, they didn't understand, they couldn't articulate it. I would be like, okay, why do I have to know 7 times 7 is 47 or 49?
Yeah.
What is it? 49?
Yes,
See, I
49.
don't
You're
remember that
correct.
shit.
Yeah, you're
Like,
correct.
I don't even I wasn't sure though. Like, I used a calculator and I remember all my teachers, like, "Oh, you're never gonna always have a calculator on you." Guess what, bitch? No. Anyway, um, but I digress. But in my circumstances are, obviously people, kids who are autistic make up a very, very small percentage of the population, but it's one of those things where you're right. If you cannot articulate the why behind the what, a lot of kids aren't going to take it and they're not going to understand what that means. And I don't know that I would go as far as to say it's indoctrination. It is kind of in a way to say, like, basically, you've got to learn X, Y, and Z, regurgitate it onto a test, with little or no thought for, the first 15 years of your educational life. And then
hmm
once you get to college, then you can start really getting into the nitty gritty. And, again, I can only say for myself, but I'm like, it really nothing, nothing in my life for the most part, made a lot of sense till I went to college because that's where, I really got into science.
Yeah.
And science is all about, listen, if you want to say this, go ahead, but you better have your data, you better have your facts, and you better have multiple sources.
Yeah.
Um, and that science, like I and I'll say this in a somewhat blasphemous way, science was my savior. Like science is what literally saved and turned around my life. Learning about it, working within it, continuing to be in that world completely immersed for like 17 years. It's literally transformed how I see the world and interact with people to, a degree that I can only compare to those who have like a religious experience or awakening.
Hmm. So I just had a thought and I lost it. Dang it.
Oh, I hate that.
Yeah, I hate it
I
too.
hate that.
Um, but in short, I I agree with you, and that's why I think that I'm gonna try and tie this back to video games. I think that's one of the reasons why we talk about we call it streamlining, which is just a
Mhm.
very politically correct way of saying dumbing down.
Yep.
Video games,
Mhm.
um, because video game demographics, which at this point is still, for the most part, 40 and younger. Now, I know you are above that demographic,
Mhm.
but generally, if you say the age
Yeah.
range of most people that play video games is going to be in that age range
Yeah.
and not above.
Right.
Um, and so, but the thing is, though, that culture has been dumbed down predominantly by the public school system. Um, so complicated puzzles and figuring them out is not a skill that is taught in public school.
Right.
Um, and so and that's where I think we just kind of try to once again bring this back to video games, and that's where I think developers miss the point. Is this is going to sound like what I'm saying is stupid people like FPSs? That's not what I'm saying. Um, but the reason why more people aren't playing single player, complicated, long drawn out storyline games isn't because the mechanics are too hard. I think that may be part of the reason, but that's not the predominant reason. Like, the predominant reason is because the attention span, the mental patience, and the thrill isn't there. Like the immediate thrill, the immediate adrenaline rush. I guess that's what I mean. And there's
Oh,
I
finish, please. I don't
yeah,
want.
and I don't now that doesn't mean it's funny because I think you'll see a lot more that single player games, single game, single player games, the people that play them. I'm, wow, really having English is hard. Um, People
Another
that
drink.
play single player games, there's more crossover from that platform to, yes, I also enjoy Call of Duty, I also enjoy Halo, I also enjoy Apex, than vice versa.
Now, do you have data to back that up, or is that just something that you feel is happening?
No, it would just be my own observation. So, for
Okay.
instance, I feel like I can watch a lot of YouTubers who their primary YouTube channels based on single player games, but they also enjoy FPS games,
Hmm.
as opposed to the opposite, where YouTubers whose primary audience is FPS games and competitive
Hmm.
FPS games who also play single player games. And I'm a subscriber to a good amount of channels, and I don't think that's by accident. So the data, I guess you could say, is I can't point to a scientific study that says that, but based on my
Well,
own information gathering, as far as YouTubers, like you're not going to see Doctor Disrespect or Tim the Tatman play Skyrim on their channel. You're not going to see that.
yeah.
On the flip side, you will see ESO or Oxhorn, who are large single player games, play multiplayer games, and they will do okay on their channel. And
So
I don't think that's by accident.
no, and well, I'm not gonna support 100% of what you say because I don't know how much of this translates. There was an actual clinical study done on different types of video games that was published. I think, God, I want to say this is a month ago. I don't have good internal timeline stamps,
If you find
but
it, I'd love to see it.
yes, I'll look for it. It shouldn't be too hard. So
Mm-hmm.
what it is you might be able to look it up and just Google or even use Google Scholar. I don't know if anyone's familiar with that, but that's what you use if you want to see peer-reviewed actual research, not a news story based on research. So Google Scholar, it might be a little harder to find exactly what you're looking for, but it was a study based on the dopamine release of certain games, certain video games,
Mm-hmm.
and they found that I want to say it was shooting games, first person shooter games in particular, but
Mm-hmm.
also like games like Grand Theft Auto, that the quick and constant dopamine response from doing something, basically, downing an enemy player, getting cash, getting guns, getting whatever it is, the loot that you get from shooting someone far exceeded the dopamine rush of games that were puzzle based. So
I
when
believe
you
it.
talked when you originally brought it up, I was wondering if you brought it up because you read that study. I'll be honest, I didn't read the whole thing because I was at work and like I have weird off times, but I read like half of it. I read the abstract, I read the conclusion, and I started reading the methodology. I mean, this is peer reviewed, so I mean, I'm not one of an academic level that I can be like, oh, this isn't accurate.
Yeah.
And most people watching our streams probably aren't that level for the most part, I would think. Um, and that's not a knock on them. That's
No.
just like, the only people who can say something is peer reviewed and is bogus are people that's
Who
all
are
they do. They
peers?
wouldn't be on YouTube. Yeah, they
Yeah.
would not be on YouTube right now watching
Yeah.
us. But anyway, it's one of those things that I use the potato chip analogy. So potato chips in general, they're Lay's potato chips, Frito. Yeah, I forget who the parent company is, but there was scientific research that
Frito
went
Lay.
in Frito Lay. So whoever the big company is that owns like something like 50 or 60% of the potato chips, they did a study back in the I think it was the early 70s. It might have been mid 70s, and they did a brain study on sugar and salt in particular. Now, before this time, potato chips were lightly salted, but for the most part, they didn't have a lot of varying flavors. They didn't have sugar on them. They were thicker. They were less processed than they are now. They were actual baked chips, as opposed to like, flash dried or flash, fried or whatever they are now. But they did actual research that eventually came to light something like 20 years ago. It came out. Someone leaked it. They were actually able to hang on to this for so long that showed that the combination of sugar and salt that they put on their potato chips in their bags was produced the same neurological response that cocaine does when someone snorts a line of cocaine. And now this is not trying to say that, chips are drugs and these people are drug dealers, but it shows you that these companies are not dumb. They hire actual research they produce and conduct just like tobacco companies did.
Mm-hmm.
Just like, the fucking who's the Opoid family that's like being sued through the ass right now for the opioid epidemic. I forgot their name. But they hire actual scientists that do these research studies, and a lot of these scientists try and go rogue, and they get slapped down with like legal gag orders and threatened to like literally ruin their lives if they go public with any of this stuff. But they do actual scientific research to figure out from a neurological side, which is mostly unconscious inside of you, what is going to make you want that product more.
Mm-hmm.
There is a reason that nicotine levels are exactly where they are in cigarettes. There is a reason that salt and sugar is exactly at the mixture proportions they are in potato chips, why they are in cookie dough. Um, why video games, why they do dumb them down when they have something successful. That's why they try to make them more action oriented and less to read in a lot of these successful games because they know that it'll keep people more engaged. That's actually why I think ESO is made so much more money than all the other Elder Scrolls games combined because it is more action oriented. That's not to say, now I'm not trying to put down the characters they develop are awesome. There is so much lore to read and so many side quests and characters to talk to if you want to.
Hmm.
But the primary addiction that I have, and I have no problem calling it an addiction because it is, I put more hours into ESO than I work throughout the week. No, I do. I'm
I
averaging
believe
like
you.
85 hours. I'm averaging Steam tracks it. There was 1 week or 1 2 week period that I put in 93 hours on average into
That's
ESO.
crazy, dude.
I know, right? My average since I got the game is about 80 to 85 hours a week is my standing average.
Phew.
And the reason for this is not just the theory crafting, not just, that you can do single player PvP group content, is that it is so action oriented that I can see my decisions in real time on the
Mhm.
characters I create with the gear, the skills, everything perfectly. I can see the results in real time and it can give me a dopamine response or it doesn't. And I go, shit, I got to change this right now to make it better. Otherwise, I'm not going to be able to go to sleep.
Right.
And
Right.
you
Yeah.
cannot like, and World of Warcraft started, well, maybe they didn't start it, but they perfected this genesis of MMOs that everybody has been trying to recapture. And I think ESO and Final Fantasy are just the two top dogs that have, perfected it
Yeah.
in their worlds.
It's funny that you bring up dopamine because dopamine, even though it's natural, it's in your body, it's something that your body creates to let you know that
Yeah.
this is good. Like
Hmm.
that's the purpose of that chemical. But it's also something you can be addicted to.
Oh yeah.
Um, and so it's no wonder that, when you look at things that create dopamine, so video games create dopamine, pornography creates dopamine, um,
Reading novels can create
reading
like,
creates
yeah.
dopamine, listening to music creates
Oh
dopamine.
yeah.
Um, so it's no way that all of those things, as we've studied them more and more, why it's like it's fine. Even if you just go back 10 years. So that's only 2011. So you think 2000, that's not that long ago, 2011.
Mhm.
Pornography was not considered something you could be addicted to. Now
Okay.
it's something that's like, oh, pornography is definitely addictive. Not only is it addictive, but there are studies that are coming out that says that it rewires your brain. And it's not that it's the pornography that rewires your brain, it's the influx of dopamine that
Right.
rewires your brain.
Yeah, that's true.
It's this, but your brain has the same response as sugar, and you brought up cocaine.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
it creates a satisfaction. So sugar, and you will know this a lot more than I do, but sugar, your body creates a craving for sugar, not because your body is addicted to sugar, but your body is addicted to the dopamine that the sugar fix creates. Um, and so when it's like,
Yes, but food gets a little trickier because our body only runs off of carbohydrates, which is sugar. So
in varying forms, but it's not all created equal. But yes.
no, it's not all created equal, but
Hmm.
like whether it's fat or protein, right? We have fat, we have protein, and we have carbohydrates. The fat and protein, if we use it as a fuel source, it has to be broken down into a carbohydrate
Right.
for our body to utilize it.
Right.
So I mean, when you look at the body, so food is a little bit different because you need food to survive. So the hunger response doesn't happen because of a dopamine response. I just wanted to clarify that for some people. But you are correct though that the dopamine response that we get from having things that are pleasurable,
Hmm.
and sugar and salt are two of like the highest ones.
Yeah.
Yes, you can be addicted technically to anything
Right.
because of what they call the law of facilitation, which is what you're saying. So I'm sorry, but I got to go into this
No,
now
I'm
because
glad you
I'm like,
clarified. No, that's good.
this is my area of expertise.
Yep.
So the law of facilitation says that basically energy will try to find the path of least
Least resistance.
resistance,
Right.
right? So when I am learning now, I don't now this may be different because of how technology has advanced and permeated our culture. But when I was in school and I learned on the old Apple IIs, right? And I had to learn how to type for the first time. You have to go A S
Right.
S
I
S
remember that.
D
Yeah.
D D. Remember that?
I do.
And remember how hard it was
Oh man.
because your brain was not good at communicating with the fingers in that particular motion. That is the law of facilitation. So basically, when your brain would send a signal down the nerves down here, it was very staticky.
Hmm.
But the more you do it, the clearer that signal becomes to the point where if you do something enough, this is for pro athletes, this is learning to type, this is learning to ride a bicycle,
Muscle memory.
you can yes, you can get it to the point where it becomes autonomous. So babies, they have an urge to walk, but they have no idea how to do it. And they struggle with it. They crawl, they look at you, they see you, they mimic you, and it's very difficult for them. But then once you're at like 5 years old, it's not a conscious action anymore. You
Right.
just do it. You don't think about chewing and swallowing. It's autonomous.
Right.
And unfortunately, that can happen with anything. So this is where they say, like, you probably heard the term like negative people become more negative as they get older. That's actually true. That's not just like some ism. When you wire your brain in a certain way, and this can be done unconsciously, and it usually is, when you are in a depressed state, you look for things that depress you. You
Oh
don't
yeah.
look for things that make you feel better. You look for things that depress you. If you are a teenager and you find porn on the internet where you already are horny all the time and you
Yeah.
find something that gratifies that horniness, of
Right.
course you're going to do it all the time.
Right.
Right? So it's one of those things where you're finding when you find something pleasurable and you do it over and over and over, and this can happen with a video game, this can happen with a thought process, this can happen with how you interact with other people in your life, how you interact with objects. Can become what you feel is instinctual
Right.
when really it's something that you have done for so long that your brain does it without your conscious thought, and
Right.
we call it an addiction.
Yeah.
And it, I the word addiction implies that it is conscious when so many times it's not.
Well, which is
So
what
it's
which is why I completely agree with every single word you said. Um which is why to kind of okay, so real life, how does this play itself? Which is why
yeah.
even though yeah, I think it's interesting that in the psychology field, even pop psychology, everything you said is right. Or is known, you know? And it's not something that is disputed. However, it's interesting that now I understand I know the studies that says positive reinforcement is more effective than negative reinforcement.
Mhm.
However, the very thing that I don't know a better way to say this, so this probably isn't completely
Okay.
accurate, but bear with me. The thing that rewires your brain, you brought up the teenager that looks at pornography.
Mhm.
Part of the gratifying nature of that is there's no immediate perceptive negative ramifications.
Yes.
Um, and so that's why for, when you hear me as a parent of a 5-year old, a 4-year old, and a year and a half year old, hear the, oh, you can't do negative reinforcement with your kids. It's like, bull crap, you can't. Like, even though as a parent, I strongly believe that positive reinforcement is a huge, powerful tool. But the thing is, though, if you only have a screwdriver in your toolbox, you can only do part of the jobs that you need to do. Sometimes you need a hammer in the toolbox too. Um,
No, I agree with that. But and
well,
so
hold on.
if I might, oh, sorry.
Let
Yep,
me
yep,
let
yep.
me finish my thought. And so, uh, um, I think that's one of the. Oh, I lost it again. Man,
The societal like
getting
negative
old.
effects
Yeah,
of like
getting old
only
sucks.
positive, right?
Um, yeah, well, yeah, but where was I going with that?
I'm sorry, man. I fucked that up.
Yeah, you did. I gotta be honest. Yeah, you did.
No, I
Like,
did. I'm sorry.
no, now you should say whatever you're gonna say because I forget what I was gonna say.
Well, I was gonna say, I think that, and I was talking to my wife about this. My parents' generation and my grandparents' generation,
Oh,
in the
no,
Great
sorry.
Depression
I'm
and
going to
oh,
cut you off
go
because I
ahead, go ahead,
remember.
go.
So you brought about muscle memory. So one of the things that I'm learning as a parent, but it's also something that for those, if there's anyone out here who's watching it now or going to watch it in the future, um, frustration on someone's part, mentally or physically, is usually, in my experience, 'cause I see this in my kids all the time, and especially in my oldest son, who would exhibit signs of being on the autistic spectrum,
Mhm,
just based on physical signs. Um, like walking on the balls of his feet, because that's a soothing mechanism, and
mhm,
patterns, the recognition of patterns. Um, is Most people get extremely frustrated, including children, with themselves and with others when their body can't catch up to their brain. And one of the clearest example that I've ever seen is my son, my oldest son, who it took him a lot longer for him to talk than it should have, especially when you consider the measure of his intelligence. Like, not Sheldon Cooper from Big Bang intelligence, but maybe just a notch under that.
okay.
To the point where he's 5 and he's doing multiplication. Just math and science out of this world. Arts, not so much. Um, but anyway, I digress. But the thing is, though, one of the things we know is he would get exceedingly frustrated and angry. He just had an anger problem. He'd get frustrated with himself. He'd get frustrated with others because he couldn't talk. And it's because his brain was there. He knew
Mhm,
exactly wanted to communicate, but that muscle memory, just his tongue, wouldn't do what he wanted it to do. Um,
mhm,
and so I would just encourage all of this is kind of a PSA, mainly to myself because I forget this all the time, is when people get frustrated, especially with themselves, and I find myself to be that person, and by extension, maybe frustrated with other people. It's usually because there's something that their brain is doing that their physical self can't manifest. Um, and so, which is just kind of a testament to what you were saying, is especially in child development. So if you want to be a parent out there, keep that in mind. If your child is going through a time where they're so frustrated, they get angry, they're whiny, they're all that stuff, it's usually because their brain is in a place that their body isn't.
mhm.
Um, but anyway, it was just
Is
for
that kind of like an offshoot of something you just thought of?
when you brought up muscle memory,
Yeah.
it's when I think of, man, just all the ways that I have failed as a dad, and I'm gonna get emotional just saying this.
Uh-oh.
No, I'm serious. It's not the rum talking; it's me talking.
No,
Um,
I get that.
but it's just like, man, when I think about all my failures of getting frustrated with my kids, especially my oldest son, who I would argue he probably has an IQ of 160, but is also on the autism scale,
Hmm.
in my opinion. And my daughter, who's a preemie, as some of you know, she was 3.5 months premature, which has lasting effects through her life. When I
Oh, I
think
didn't
of
know that.
my lack of patience and my just, oh my gosh, why aren't you just getting this? Like, why aren't you just,
Yeah.
man? And I can't think of you know me, you know, I'm not someone who uses a ton of profanity or anything like that, but I just don't know a better way to describe that. Man, I've been such an asshole to my kids
Here,
because I didn't
so
understand that.
here's the thing. I'm gonna say this to you in kind of a cathartic way, because I do believe, based on my experience and based on, like my wife and her experience with her family, my parents should not have been parents. Like, they were not people who were ready for that kind of responsibility, let alone responsibility for a kid who is autistic. When autism really wasn't a thing,
Yeah.
in the fucking 70s and 80s, nobody really understood it, cared to understand it, whatever. When you are a parent, and this is something that I literally talked to my wife today, I asked her, would you ever want a second full time job that you're on call for 24 hours a day, that you don't get paid for,
Right.
that you actually have to pay for, and that you never get to really quit ever? And she was like, oh my, no. And I'm like, that's why we are not parents.
Yeah.
Now, on top of that, and I don't say this in a negative way towards you, and I don't necessarily say it in um a condoning way or a way to kind of make you feel better, but just because it's factual, people, parenting is one of the things you can do without having any sort of education or, know
No, right. No,
nothing about it. Right. And
right.
it's not something you can go to all the parenting classes, you can
Right.
read
No.
all the books.
Yeah.
Nothing fucking prepares you,
Nothing
right? Like,
prepares you for parenting except parenting. Yeah.
right. And
Um.
and I'm like, think about all the people you know in your life. And this is gonna me telling you to be judgmental, but also be a little factual about how little they understand of themselves.
Mhm.
And think about how much more of yourself you now understand than you did just 5 years ago, right?
Yeah.
Think about, like, the continual growth someone makes. I think about, this is why I don't want to be a parent. I've reached out several times, and I think I'm going to call them a different place tomorrow. I'm getting a vasectomy. I don't ever want to be a fucking parent.
No chances.
I'm no chances. I don't want to take any sort of risk, because I understand from seeing other people what it takes to be a good parent, what they go through. And it's not even the mistake. Every parent makes mistakes. I'm like, I don't want to go through that.
Yeah.
Like,
Oh, that's
I don't
understandable.
care about all the benefits and what. Like, I don't,
Right.
like, it's not worth it to me. It's not worth possibly screwing up a kid who might become Jeffrey Dahmer. And I'm not saying that's what you're doing, but I'm saying, like, that's a possibility that's a risk I cannot take for myself.
Right. No,
And it's
and
like,
I get that. And I think that's one of
yeah,
the things that I'm once again I'm going to try and bring this back to video games.
good luck.
Yeah. No, no, I'm going to do it. Listen. I
Okay.
came up with the Bob Ross analogy. I can do
That's
anything.
that's true. That's true.
but but no, that's what pisses me off. That may be a bit strong, but I'm going to stick with it. I'm going to stick with my convictions here.
Okay.
Um, when
What pisses you off?
well, I'm gonna share, but I'm gonna try to
Okay.
share it in the most vanilla way possible to be the least offensive. But that's a frivolous and pointless pursuit. Um,
Okay.
when you read articles like the WHO has now said that video game addiction,
Mhm.
which maybe it's a dopamine addiction, but but they categorize it as anyone who plays video games on average for more than an hour a day. Which, listen,
Okay.
if you're watching this channel, that's you, that's me. On
Yeah.
average, that's
Yeah.
and it's just like my son has taken my oldest son who's autistic has taken a liking to video games and sports. So him and I have been playing Madden together. He doesn't play because he's 5. So but I
Mhm.
play and we love to play together. And I've been playing Assassin's Creed Odyssey, and he loves it. He loves talking about what's going on the screen. He runs across the house, tells my wife what's going on, and runs back and watches me some
Yeah.
more. And he loves being the commentator. He loves it because it's bringing to life to him, into him words that he can express.
Sure.
And then to have things like the WHO come out and say, well, it's a
So okay.
disease.
So if I'm going
Yeah.
to I'm going to stop you there because here is the problem with research and terminology is that in the science community, a term that may seem to the layperson, and I don't mean stupid, I mean layperson, someone who doesn't
Oh
study
no, I'm a
or
layperson.
interact
No,
with
no
science.
offense
Yeah, yeah,
taken. I
yeah.
get it.
No, so like in finance, you would be an expert. I would be a layperson. I would
Hmm.
argue that between you and I would be the expert in science, but it's all about basis of comparison. So it's one of those things where addiction does not necessarily mean negative though. So that's the problem is that like when they say it's an addiction, what they're trying to do in science is try to create categories for study and then that study may alter the idea, the perception, the definition, the vocabulary
Hmm.
around whatever it is it's studying. And I think a problem with science, and this is, and the WHO, remember, is a conglomerate of
Yeah.
scientific studies done from around the world. So if you don't know how to read an actual white paper, a peer reviewed research study that has been published with which I argue it's not easy to do. Even someone like me, like there are depending on how deep the research goes, I have Google Scholar up and I have Google up because I'm like, what the fuck is that thing? I've never even heard of that, like that chemical. Like what is that? And for me, I can sit down and take 45 minutes to read a research paper. Most people aren't going to do that. They're going to read a 5-minute article. Well, okay, let's be honest, 2-minute article that they can read on the internet of someone who doesn't have a degree or background in science who is taking a study and writing their interpretation of
Interpretation.
it
Yeah.
for clickbait. And this is the problem with
I feel
science is
that way
that
about economics.
same
Yeah.
thing. No, I agree 100% is that people don't go to the cited research and read the study. 99% of the time, what the person is saying, what they are writing is not an accurate depiction
Yeah.
of what the research is saying. And this goes back to your argument with logic is that a lot of people don't know how to look at something like that and disseminate it and be like, well, that's not really what it says, and then take the further step of going, okay, I'm going to read some other researcher articles, or maybe I'm going to read, the cited research this research article is based off of, which is what PhD candidates do. So
Right.
if you're not
Mhm.
into that, I understand, but that's a fundamental problem that addiction always has a negative connotation in our society when
Right.
that's not necessarily the case. Like
Yeah.
Elon Musk is an addict. Jeff Bezos is an addict. The people on Shark Tank, I don't even know who are on, they are addicts, right? To the
Technically.
definition
Yeah.
of, yes, of the DSM, regardless of volume, they are an addict. Everyone is an addict to something in their life. That
Yeah.
doesn't necessarily mean it's impacting their life in a negative way, and it's something they have to get rid of.
Mhm. So
You know what I mean?
yeah, so I want to
Okay.
one thing to that, and then I'm going to get back on a soapbox for 30
Okay.
seconds. Is it's
Awesome.
fun as someone who it's their job, it's their profession, it's their I don't know. as far as how economic bases and economic markets interact together, because I mean, I'm a
Hmm.
financial controller, CFO, whatever you want to say, for venture
Yeah, yeah.
capitalists. So it's my job to know how those things interact together. Um, there have been peer reviewed economic studies on things that it's like, listen, unless the person who conducted the study is Ernie and the peer is Bert, I have absolutely no idea how you came to this conclusion.
Right.
So just because you see, oh, just because even if you read not an article on the peer reviewed study, the
Hmm.
peer reviewed study, listen,
Hmm.
there's a good chance that one peer is Bert and the other one is Ernie. And they
Yep.
and the people and the person doing the research and the person conducting the test or the check for that research, they're
Hmm.
also complete morons. So
Hmm.
for those of you out there who do your own research, just because it says peer reviewed, it doesn't always mean a thing. So that's my now a lot of times it does. I'm not saying that for
No,
all peer
well,
reviewed research. I'm just saying that there's lots of peer reviewed research that excuse me, that even if they show you all these fancy numbers, they're still calling a duck a chicken. And it's like, and I see now, I don't know in the psychological realm, in the health realm, I don't know anything about that. So I have absolutely no way to say that's happening there too. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. I can tell you in the economic field, it happens all the time. Whereas, well, we conducted this study and, you know, in these markets of this many people and yada, yada, yada. It's like, I understand you're saying this, but your research is still crap because
yeah.
you know because the reason why I say it is because you know I've had experience in universities in two different states in different parts of the country in several different markets and it's just kind of like, yeah, man, you may have doctor in front of your name but you're a moron, you know, or someone's paying you
Yeah, yeah,
to
yeah.
say this. um
So yeah, if I might,
yeah.
like, don't get me wrong, there have been several news stories that you can look up. One of them actually famous about like the famous anti-vax supposedly peer-reviewed research that came out like in the 90s, that even the guy who published it himself came out and said, "Yeah, this is fake," even after people had like proven it.
Mm-hmm.
There are instances where, in science, when when a private for-profit company produces a study, there is you
Falsified
can set
results. Yep.
up, well, not necessarily. Up you can set up any sort of study to lean toward producing the results you want. I believe that with economics, because it's a concept that we created, it might be easier, but and I can only speak to the health world. When it comes to, something that cures cancer or that does or causes cancer or whatever, it gets lit the fuck up real fast if there's anything wrong with it. The
Right.
thing about scientists, it's like having, so let me do this real quick. Let me back up a step. When you have a research paper that you have done, that you set up a specific methodology to prove or disprove this idea that you are testing, you're supposed to produce those results, whether it proves or disproves the idea.
Mm-hmm.
You take those results, you give them in the science field, you allow typically about a panel of 4 to 5 other doctors that are doctors in the medical field but specialize in different aspects, to purposely poke holes in your methodology and try to basically prove that you did something wrong at any step along the way. If they don't, and they conclusively come together like, hey, this is, legitimate to the best of our knowledge, to everything that we have seen, this is true, this is reproducible. Whether you do it in Japan, whether you do it in South Africa, whether you do it in Europe, you can reproduce this over and over and you're going to get the same results. Now, they'll do that to prove that, and people, I don't know what it is about science, But if there is any variation in that from anyone, it's like blood in the water, and everybody just jumps on that fucking thing until they basically prove it without a doubt.
Well,
It's
right,
weird.
and I think one of the things is I think everything you just described is why the theory of peer review is so powerful and so it's just good. Like, is a good thing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Unfortunately, just I can't speak in the realm of medicine, but I can speak in the realm of economics. It gets corrupted because people are involved.
Oh, it
Um,
does. It does. Don't get me wrong. It
mhm.
does in there as well. But the thing that I like about the internet is that those things in the health industry that creep out, I mean, it's crazy how almost
Right.
instantaneous they are called out for their bullshit. A lot of times it doesn't matter because, again, confirmation bias, right? It's autonomous, it's not something we're typically aware of. And if somebody reads something that they think they already know or they already believe a little bit, and even if that thing is disproven later on, they will hang on to that and the damage is already done. So, and I'm sure that happens in economics too, or,
Yeah.
I don't know if that like
Well,
affects company
I mean,
structures or.
I can't tell you the amount of times where it hasn't mattered who the administration is, but
Mhm.
the guy who whoever's running the Fed, um, will come out and give an assessment of the economy, whether or not they're going to raise interest rates or whatever the case may be.
I've been
And
watching that a little bit lately,
and there's
yeah.
been a lot of times where I'm hearing what this person is saying, and it's like, it smells like poop in my room. Why does it smell like poop in my office?
You're not the only one
It's
saying
just
that.
because what you're saying, like what this person, it's political, and this is supposed to be someone who, even though they are working for the government, supposed to be an independent source in a sense. And it's just like,
Yeah.
man, like now this was before my schooling, but I didn't need to go to school to know this. Man, what I remember, hearing Ben Bernanke talk, Obama's chair of the Fed. It's not Obama's, but you know what I mean. Well, just when Obama was in office and talking about
Okay.
and how he was just we're just essentially we're just going to print money, and it's just like, you think this is a good idea? Like, you're a moron. Like don't you know what this is going to do to? We're getting off topic of games, but it's just but all of this, the point to say is like, you'll have people who are come in front who will be presented to you as experts in their field, and then other people who may not be in the spotlight but who are also experts in their field will listen to them, and it's just like, it's just feces oozing out of your mouth.
Hmm.
um and I feel like we a prime example, doc and this I know because of my wife, who is an expert in the medical field. um when she cringes every time Fauci talks, because he keeps calling the coronavirus therapeutic a vaccine, which
Wait, what?
the difference between a therapeutic and a vaccine. A therapeutic is something that helps with symptoms and makes it less transferable, but it's not an eradicator. A
Mm-hmm.
vaccine is an eradicator. So
Uh, Vaccines though aren't 100% effective though.
did you say defective or effective?
No, they're not 100% effective though. No vaccine is.
What? But the thing is, though, it's an erratic thing. Is though 100% is not the threshold of no return, in a sense. So any sort of virus needs to be able to reproduce enough to outlive its life cycle.
Okay, I think I know what you're saying,
That's
but
the way that I understand it. And once again, my wife's the expert on this because she actually works as an expert witness, like in lawsuits.
mhm.
So it's like courts. bring her company, like who she represents, to court to testify as an expert.
Yeah. I'm sorry,
Um,
I've never heard of the eradicator
yeah,
terminology
so it
before
needs
in
to be a
terms
certain
of
threshold. So it may
vaccines.
not be 100%,
Mhm.
but it needs to hit a certain threshold, so that the virus or whatever can't reproduce faster than than the percentage of vaccine
Oh,
gets
I
rid
see.
of it.
Yeah, 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 yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
So COVID doesn't match that threshold,
Right.
as we've seen with the Delta variant and all that stuff. But Fauci still calls it a vaccine, where people just because mainstream because kind of people just think, well, I'm getting a needle in my arm, so it's a vaccine. Like, no, I'm not anti-COVID getting shots for COVID. I'm not anti that. Um, but that's not to say that the vaccine isn't helpful. Oh wow, we're getting off track. But that's not to say that the vaccine isn't helpful. I'm not anti-vax. I am good with I'm good with with vaccinations, and I'm good with therapeutics, and I believe they're helpful, and I believe that there's no if people should get them. I don't think should be the law, but I think people should get them. I think it's good for their health. You're looking at me sideways. Why are you looking at me sideways?
I'm confused. Is the contention the vocabulary?
You're right. The contention is the vocabulary, because
Oh,
saying vaccine has certain implications, which even though most people don't,
what what what
because
are I'm sorry, I don't
when
I guess
people
I'm
think
confused on
vaccines,
that.
they think eradication. I'm like, I
Okay.
cut out again. Sorry, hold on.
I don't think I'm one of those people. That's why I'm a little
I'm
confused.
not saying you are. It's more of an example of people who are being presented as experts, and that's not to say that Fauci isn't an expert. It's just to say experts don't always give you the correct information. That was really the only point that
I'll be
that I
honest.
was
I
doing.
mean, I don't
Um,
watch news media. I usually do all my stuff
but
reading.
it was
So
just an
I don't
example that
know.
most people
Okay.
could relate to. That was the only reason why I brought up Fauci. I don't particularly like Fauci. I think he's kind of an attention whore. But as far as his ability to run the CDC, I have no opinion on the matter. I don't know. I have no idea what it takes to run the CDC, so I can't speak on the matter. Um, but um, I'm just using his he was an example of someone who's presented as an expert who can speak authoritatively on a topic, who who I believe has, and medical professional lots of medical professionals have believed that have led people astray. Not
Yeah.
astray
Oh,
as in given
Dr.
false,
Oz.
yeah, right, who has given false information. So and so here, but I'm gonna try and bring this back to video games again. Um, but that's one of the things that I just, and I'm going to go back, it's kind of back to my son, and just back to video games in general, and just kind of
Mhm.
what people say. So I just want to encourage, especially since we run video game channels,
Mhm.
it because there's still a strong subculture of video games are bad.
Yeah, it's a
Um,
stigma. Yeah.
it's well, they shoot up high schools because they play video games. That nonsense. Um, and it's just like, to me, when I look at my son and I see the potential of video games in his life, is there a potential for it to be an addiction to him to the point where he is not doing what he should be doing? I do. And that needs to be monitored, and it needs to be taught in him. But there's a huge, there's a big old but to that sentence. Um,
Yeah.
the but is though I see the huge potential for a little boy who's unable to give to express a voice for what he's experiencing, for
Mhm.
what he sees in the world, as an opportunity for him to not only have a voice, even though I believe that, but to express certain desires that he would be unable otherwise to express if it wasn't for video games. And I
Sure.
think that's one of the things that draws us all to video games. It expresses thoughts and desires that we can't express otherwise. And
Yeah.
so I just want to encourage all of you who are in video games that maybe hears that, well, video games are just makes people violent, it gives people ADD, it gives people, this, it has all these negative effects, which there are negative effects to video games. I'm not going to sit here and deny that. I strongly believe there are. And I'm not, video games should never ever make you welch on any sort of responsibilities that you have. It shouldn't interfere with everyday life. Real life is more important than virtual life. However, don't let people don't let people make you feel bad. Don't make people think you're lesser. Don't make people think that there's something wrong with you because you like video games. Don't let people look at you sideways because you like video games, and because, for a lot of people it's still indie and not mainstream, and not a normal or not even normal, I don't think people would say that, but productive habit, or hobby. It can be as productive as you make it or as you allow it. And so I would just encourage you all who are watching this, who are super into video games just like me, and super into video games just like I think my son's going to be. And I'm glad that he will be. It's something that him and I will share. And it's something that hopefully, with my help, it will be something that is productive in his life and not destructive in his life. Let video games be a productive source in your life and prove all of those people wrong. Because video games are amoral. They're not out to destroy you or to construct you. They're amoral, but you can have them be constructive. And I would just encourage everyone to do that. For those of you who don't know how to express certain things that video games help you express, man, that's great. Like let them help you express those things, but don't let anyone make you think you're lesser of a human being, you're less productive because you like video games. Because I just, when I hear those things and I think about my son, I get angry, I get sad, and I get pissed off, because I know my son and all of his deficiencies. He has a lot of great attributes, but I also know his deficiencies, in which I think video games could potentially help him. And the thought of someone making him feel lesser because he likes those things makes me really angry. It makes me want to rage against those people. And so I don't want anyone to feel like that. And that has never hit home more so than now, when I have a son who I know those things could potentially help. So that's my soapbox.
Okay.
That's my thing. So anyway, we can move on. um,
Fine. Um, if I might, I'm. Let me think about this for a second. How many sheets to the wind are you right now?
none. I guess it depends on what you mean by that. Like, I mean, what do you mean?
Are
Like
you
to
a
be honest,
little buzzed, or
no,
are
no.
you
As in,
like
I could go drive a car, get pulled over, and blow under a .06 or whatever the
okay? Just
DWI
wanted to
is.
make sure.
Yeah.
So because I think this is not like a judgment. I believe
You
this
can
is a
judge. It's really okay. I'm okay with it.
no. I know, but I guess in a
Caveats are
way I
not
am.
necessary.
Well, I feel like in this instant it might be, because it might help get my point across more, in that this is, what you said was that when you see these things, these studies or news stories or people that say X, Y, or Z, you do what a lot of people do, and what I still do and I struggle with, is that you personalize something that has nothing to do with you. And this is very human. We all do this. And this is something I think that as individuals and as communities, I think we need to work on to evolve our ability to coexist. Is that to and I think you might have even touched on this in a different way, but when let's take the example of Fauci, right? Fauci doesn't know your wife, has nothing to do with her. When he is speaking about the efficacy or the benefits of vaccines, trying to get more Americans to take it, he's not talking to your wife. He's not talking to you. Like he's talking to the people who are like resistant to it. But there are aspects of who he is, like even you said he's a attention whore, right? Like let's say he is like I don't know I'm not gonna make that judgment, but the fact that it bothers you,
Oh, it was an afterthought.
it's a
It's
personal. No, but it
mhm,
does though. You don't diminish it, because we all do this, right? I do this with Destiny, right? When Destiny, even though I don't play the game, that I actively advocate against it since I left a couple years ago because they started locking it up. When they lock up new content, I want to bring it up because I'm personalizing it, even
mhm.
though I'm not even playing the fucking game. I have nothing.
Yeah,
It affects me zero,
right.
right? But it's very human to sit there and personalize something that has nothing to do with us.
Well,
That
here,
has
well,
that
time out. I'm going to stop you right there because
Okay,
it. Here's why, especially my soliloquy about video games and don't let people make you feel worse for playing video games. Um, I'm not saying that's just because I see it in the culture. I say it because I've
sure.
experienced personally. I say it because
I have too.
not only experienced personally, but experienced it in the sense where it would be a critique of my parenting.
Sure.
And so that's where it's not just I see this out there. It's not just out when you say it has nothing to do with you. No, this very much has something to do with me because it's been something that's been told to me specifically.
Right. So
And not by people out there, by people close to me in my life.
right, right. So here's and this is not to argue the point, but to set it up to reframe it, right? So this is where you and I seem to differ, and I think this has to do with me being autistic because my wife thinks this is abnormal as well. Um, People who are close in my life, I don't care what they think. Um, like if someone and again, this is I have been told and I've read that this is like an autistic thing. I don't care about my parents' approval. I don't care about other people's approval. Um, my wife's approval is probably the only person that I care about. But in all honesty, like if she said, she wanted to leave me one day because I did something or she no longer loves me, I'd be like, all right. I'm sure at some point I would be
There'd be
brokenhearted
no
about
sense
it,
of
but
loss.
there would be a sense of loss, but it wouldn't be in the way that I think normal people take it. And this makes me look at situations, and maybe this is what gravitates me towards the kind of nihilistic Buddhist idea of non grasping, right? Is that like if in situations where people have told me like I don't think that you're as knowledgeable as you think, I don't think you're a good video game player, I don't think you're a good YouTuber, I don't think that you're a good husband, whatever it is, you know it doesn't really bother me. I don't care,
Hmm.
because them saying that thing doesn't actually change anything in my life.
That's interesting.
Like,
On
and I'm like, that's where I'm like, you're
that
and I'm like, I mean this in a
mhm.
good way.
No, I understand what you mean. I think
Okay.
that I don't think there's a way for me to articulate what I want to articulate without atten- uh, um, attaching a negative connotation to
Oh, do it. I
people.
get
Well,
it.
no,
Don't.
time out to people that I love.
Oh, you so what? I do it all the time.
Well, I understand that, but that bothers me.
Oh.
So
Oh.
here's the thing. There a lot of people have flaws.
Yes. Everyone.
Everyone has lots of flaws, including the
Yeah.
people that we love the most. And
Right.
so even though the people that I love the most, or people that I love, um,
Mhm.
may have this one particular what I would think flaw because of their ideology on video games,
Mhm.
doesn't mean that I want to bring them up in a negative light, because there's lots of ideologies they have that I so value and admire and find precious. Um, so
Okay.
so that it's kind of like I don't want to, in a sense, throw the baby out with the bathwater, in a sense. So I don't
Yes.
want to talk negatively about them in this one instance, and that be the only impression that people have of them, when there's so many good things about them, if that makes sense. And I understand that
I
when I'm
think
talking
so.
to you and I'm talking to the people who are listening, they have no idea who I'm talking about. But the thing is, though, I know. and
Right.
and
So,
and so the,
yeah.
and so that's the reason why I don't want to get too specific. um
No, 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 it's okay.
but I just, yeah, but anyway, I it's not it's
I don't have that thing. So
Mhm.
here's why, and I do believe that this is how, and I think you've seen it in your son, how math and science, uh, he is able to understand them more than like artistic expression
Right.
or even vocabulary expression. And then again, this is just me just bit riffing, because those things are logical and they make sense.
Hmm.
And that is why I feel that I excelled at science versus like art growing up. And I have no problem like saying, when I love my wife, but I could easily say, when it comes to certain subjects, she's really ignorant. I have no problem saying, I mean it with
Yeah.
no malice
Oh, right.
whatsoever. And I know that I am very ignorant on so many subjects.
Uh-huh.
And so this is what I mean, by attributing vocabulary with a stigma instinctually. And this is why I love science, is because it doesn't do that.
I
It
agree.
separates the emotion, and that emotional part, I have it in a certain way to a very extreme, but not in the way that people would consider normal. So when people, make a comment to me, whatever, in a degrading sense, I honestly I don't care, because it that's all it is. It's just them saying words. Like, it doesn't
Yeah.
affect me. And if someone was to, like, even if it was a boss, like, at my last job, there were so many things I didn't understand and they didn't want to teach me. And I tried telling my boss, like, hey, I need kind of a layout to figure this out. You've got all these veterans on the team and I'm not understanding it. And they said, well, if you're going to do this, you got to figure it out for yourself. And I literally quit the next day because I'm like, there's no way that's going to work. And they were kind of flabbergasted, right? They were like, you're just going to, I'm like, yeah, because if this isn't going to work, there's no point in me staying here. And it's not like, you know, it's not like I'm walking out with like a big fuck you, with my middle finger in the air. Kind of
Hmm.
wanted to, but it's like, if it doesn't work, why keep doing it? And this is
Right.
something like, I've seen in relationships, and like, and again, I understand my situation's a little bit different than yours. I don't talk to my family really at all. I mean, I've consciously cut off all communication with my one living parent, I think close to 8 years ago. I have no remorse on that. I don't talk to aunts and uncles that I grew up very close with, maybe like once a year.
Hmm.
I don't like you when it comes into circles of friends. You're probably the one I talk to the most. My wife and myself, I mean, that's all I really need. And if it came down to it, I'm like, if she wanted a divorce because I did something or I changed in some way, I'd probably just stay single. Because I'm like, I don't, it's the, this is so hard to articulate and not sound like a religious zealot. But the idea that brings me to like Buddhism, I'm not a Buddhist. I'm just, this is something is grasping, right? The whole idea is that when you hang on to something, it's like rope burn, right? Whatever comes into your life is going to eventually leave it, no matter what. It could be a thought, it could be an emotion, it could be a thing, it could be a person. No matter what, everything is going to leave your life, including you, right? At some point, the pain comes from, I believe, not in the appreciation and the ability to let go, but to that clinging on when you have to let go, kind of like rope burn.
No, I
And
got you.
it's like, there's some things like eventually, as much as I love ESO, I know there's going to come a time when I'm going to have to be like, oh, that's it. I'm done with it. Just like Skyrim, just like Fallout, just like Dragon Age
Yet
Origins.
you won't finish video games, which I find
R-
fascinating.
right. And that is my struggle. And I think I said this actually in my last recording, is that is my struggle, that I struggle with a lot of times, is that letting go.
Hmm.
Right? There are many areas of my life where I can consciously identify what is going on, what is causing me the suffering, and work on letting it go or changing it or changing how I adapt to it, whatever. But in certain video games, it I feel it's almost like an emotional overload that has become an identifier for me that I know will cause me suffering. So go, you know what? It's not the right time. I'm not ready for it.
Yeah.
So there are times when I do finish video games, and it's almost like, when I listened to the Beatles growing up, it was always in the background. Hated the fucking Beatles, hated them, couldn't stand listening to them. I heard them when I'm 35. I'm a huge fan. I listen to Sergeant Pepper's like once a month.
Mhm.
you know it's it's about timing. Like
Yeah.
I probably, I wasn't really into ESO, when it first came out and I played it. And even in the subsequent years that I would play it off and on, I never played it like I did this last year. So it's like, it's one of those things where I think it's about recognizing whether something is good for you or not. So like, it might be good for the channel and statistics to keep doing Skyrim mods, to keep playing Skyrim,
Hmm.
but it wasn't good for me. And
Yeah.
it's just, for me, that's the thing, is like, you got to let go sometimes. And even if it's, it doesn't mean stop talking to whoever's in your life that you care about that says certain things. It's almost recognizing like that's their opinion, and that's just it. That's all it is. It doesn't actually affect, it doesn't change who you are. It doesn't make you a bad person. It doesn't make you a bad parent. That's just someone's opinion,
Time out. I want you to
you know?
keep
Okay.
talking. I want
Okay.
you to keep talking, mainly because I really have to go to the bathroom, and I'll be back in
Oh,
two
go to the
seconds.
bathroom.
But keep talking to the people. Keep going on your thing, and
Okay.
I'll be right back.
So, oh man, this is going to make me sound so fanatical, but um, I think one of the things that is kind of a life changing aspect that literally happened to me this last year, which is in itself kind of sad that it took me what I hope to be as my half life point for me to realize this, is that letting go isn't a bad thing. We think of it, whenever we lose something, we always think of it as bad, or as sad. It can be sad, and being sad is okay. There's nothing wrong with that. But I think that there is a weird level that we have, and I don't know if this is an American thing, if this is a time and place thing in the world, or what it is. But we want to like hoard relationships. We want to hoard possessions and money, and none of those things really make us feel any better as human beings. It's, I really do believe, and this may be a dopamine thing, but it's the experience of life. As much as people want to believe it, and I think Mike is in line with this, is that they believe in an existence outside of this life we lead. I don't believe that at all. There's no efficacy to it. There's been no science on it. There's been nothing. I think that when we die, that's it. Lights are out, computer is shut off, you're an Apple II in a landfill. That's it. And for me, accepting that and knowing that all I literally have is the moment that I'm living in. The past is just memories and thought that are distorted. The future is nothing but a thought. All we literally have is literally the moment right now that Mike and I are sharing. That's it. That's all. And we don't even have that. It's gone, right? I'm going to go to bed soon. It'll be done and over. And for me, my life is about being like having the best quality of life that I can. Now that's going to be a balance of good and bad, but I definitely as a human, I want it to be more good than bad.
But how do you know
And
what?
so,
How do you know when to enjoy it? Because here's the thing. It's funny. My wife would accuse. I'm finding that a lot of what you're saying is resonating with me, even though I was gone for 45 seconds, having the best pee of my life.
yeah.
Oh my gosh, I needed a cigarette afterwards. It felt so good. Um, but it's funny. One of the things my wife would say whenever we talk about going on vacation is, like, why do you want to go on vacation? You're always miserable.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not miserable. What makes you think I'm miserable? It's like, you don't understand. You are the happiest the week before vacation because you're
Yeah.
looking forward to it.
Yeah.
But as soon
Yeah.
as you're on vacation, you're
Yep.
miserable because what you're thinking
Yep.
about is going to be over. This thing I've been looking forward to for months is going to be
Yep.
over. And I don't even
Mhm.
enjoy the vacation.
Yeah.
And so that's it's funny when she said that, and as I kind of did some introspection, I was like, wow, she's she's right. What's the point of me spending thousands of dollars on a family vacation if I'm not even going to
Hmm.
enjoy it? um
Right.
but it's like here's the thing. There's a flaw there, and the flaw isn't in everything else. The flaw is in me, because the key is you don't know what to enjoy until the time is past. And I think that, now, I don't think that means that you can't stay in the moment, because I do think there's a value of staying in the moment and enjoying the moment. But I also think that you're going to miss out. I mean, especially I can't tell you how many video games I've played. Here's me trying to bring it back to video games again. That I've played, and I've only realized how much I enjoyed that game after I was done. Like The Witcher 3 being a prime example. The last kind of when my wife and kids were out of town, I was like, okay, I'm going to get through The Witcher 3. Because it's a little more of an adult game. It's not a game that I want my kids watching or anything
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'll play it while they're out of town. So there's no chance of that. Um, but I remember just playing it, and as soon as I started to get into the weeds of it, I started thinking, like, oh my gosh, like I need to finish this before my family comes home, because I don't really feel like it's a game I can play when my kids are around. And so it just became something I needed to accomplish instead of enjoying it. But when I was
Right.
done, and I remember talking to my wife about the game and talking to my brother about the game, I was like, oh my gosh, I loved that game. But I didn't realize it in the midst of playing it. I only realized it once it was over.
Right. And
Um,
I would argue from a psychological side, and that this is normal. So we as human beings, and this is, I don't know, I can't tell because we didn't have psychology, in the Middle Ages or whatever, or even predate that. So it's hard to kind of have a baseline of comparison, but a good analogy that uh, I like is that the human mind is like a waterfall. It is constant, but it is always changing. And most people live their lives merely in anticipation for the next moment. That's all they do. They worry about their future, they worry about their past, they worry about being, productive, not having enough fun, maximizing their fun, all this shit. And again, I think this is a unique benefit now being autistic as an adult as opposed to a kid, is that time as a kid being autistic moved so fucking slow. I know people say that it moves slow as a kid and it speeds up as you get older. I'm talking it was like fucking mental torture. It would move so slow. And again, this is like, your son, how his brain is just going 100 miles an hour, and you're going that 100 miles an hour within each second. And this is probably why what attracted me to meditation is that the only way to know whether or not you are happy in any given moment is to literally sit back and observe yourself.
Hmm.
Are you happy? That's it. And
Hmm.
I do this every single day. And I've gotten into the habit of what people call introspection. I refer to as just mindful or awareness of what you're doing in the moment. So right now, I am enjoying myself immensely having this conversation with you. And almost all conversations with you, I really enjoy. And I know that I'm enjoying it in the moment.
Hmm.
And when I'm playing a video game, I know that I'm enjoying it because of the satisfaction I feel from moment to moment when I'm switching characters, when I complete something, when I see a number pop up that's really big that I've been going for. Um, I don't feel that I'm working. I don't feel like it's an obligation I have to do.
Hmm.
I don't feel like it's something that is a requirement of any way.
Yeah.
And this is something that I don't know if you've noticed this, but I've like cracked on like some fundamental levels in the last year, and this is primarily due to COVID. But I stopped caring about my identity really at all, and connected with my job, connected with how much money I make, connected with like we don't go on vacation. My wife and I don't enjoy vacations. We don't enjoy traveling. We don't enjoy staying at hotels. We want to take time off and spend it at home with each other, with our dog, go on walks, go to the Starbucks. We love having nothing to do but literally what we decide in the moment. And that is what made us decide that we don't want to be parents. Now, a lot of people will look at this as being selfish, and that's fine. If that's the way they perceive it, that's the way they perceive it. For me, I feel like it would be selfish for us to have a kid knowing that we enjoy our lives right now in this way, and we recognize how we wouldn't enjoy our lives if we were parents.
Hmm.
And so it's almost like now I catch myself probably a dozen times a day. I did today when I got angry. I remember a moment I got angry when somebody pulled in front of me on the highway, as people do every day. And I was like, what the hell am I angry for? Because I have to press on the brake pedal? That's not worth it. That's ridiculous. There's nothing, they don't know me. They didn't purposely do that to piss me off. They did it because they need to get in the lane. And it's almost like taking a scientific process and looking at myself every time I have an emotion and I get angry. And I'm not saying I'm good at this because I catch myself. Or even if I have an emotion of getting annoyed or I laugh at something, like, why was that funny? Why was that amusing? Sometimes I can't always tell, but I'm aware of what I feel. I try to be aware of what I feel as much as possible.
Hmm.
And so when you ask me, how do I know that I'm enjoying it? It's because I'm literally observing myself enjoying it.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
It
I
does,
don't know
but
if it does.
I feel like there. I guess the reason why I feel like there's some holes is because not. I mean, yeah, my own some experiences I've had, but not just that. But like, I feel like there's been so many times, not just in my life, but when I've talked to other people, has been
Hmm.
like, you don't want to do something at the start, but once you've done it, you're glad you did. Um, and so if you're constantly assessing am I enjoying this in the moment? You may not be, but that may also not be the litmus test of what enjoyment is.
No. So let me so that's
So,
I'm not
and sorry, can
saying
I
that.
just give an example just
Oh
real
yeah,
quick?
yeah,
Not
yeah.
just, I understand that you know what I'm talking about, but just kind of
Hmm.
for everyone else. Um, so one of the things I've learned about marriage is love is not a feeling. It is not, it is a choice. I choose to love my wife on a daily basis. Now, what that doesn't mean is that it doesn't mean that there aren't emotions wrapped up in that. There are emotions that are wrapped up in that. So it's not devoid of emotion. However, my love for my wife is not based on the emotion I'm feeling about her in the moment. Because if there's a time, or vice versa, so because this is much more common, we'll say, if there's a moment that I do something that pisses off my wife, which, listen, if you're married, it's going to happen. That's just, it's just in that moment, the feeling may not be what culture would say is love. Um, but in that moment, she can choose to love me, even though I may not be being lovable. Um, but the thing is, though, that's where I think I agree with taking assessment of, okay, why am I feeling the way that I'm feeling. I think it's a good thing. I think it's something that most people don't have that skill. And they should be, because most people think emotion is king, and emotion rules. And no, emotion is not king, and emotion does not rule, because emotion is fragile and it's fleeting, because it's one thing one minute and another thing the next. Um, but that's where, like, I just, there's so many things in my life where in the moment, like, I hate this. Why am I doing this? I'm not enjoying this. But looking back, I'm like, man, I'm glad I do this. And I know this is a extreme example, and it's going to make me look like a really terrible person, but that's something you all should already know. Um, my wife had to convince me to have a third kid. I didn't want to have a third kid. Two was more than enough for me. Um, but she wanted a third kid, and she convinced me to have a third kid, even in the midst of her being pregnant. I wasn't sure. It's like, oh man, we're having a third. I'm not sure how I feel about this. But here's the thing: I look at my youngest son now, who he's a year and a half now, and I try to picture my life without him. I can't. But like, and so, but
Literally can't though.
here's the thing though. In an emotional state, left to my own devices, I could. Like, I could picture my life without kids.
Okay. And
But the point is just because that's, it, if that's what I'm feeling emotionally, which I think every parent goes through, that doesn't mean that that's what's best. And so that was just an example of, man, I wasn't sure I wanted to do this, or
oh,
to be
so
honest, I
yeah.
didn't want to do this on the front end, but on the back end, it's, man, I'm so glad that this was the decision, that this was the road that we decided to travel down. Um, because I feel like I could, from an objective point of view, say I can look at what both avenues would look like and say, yeah, having the third kid, it's so much better, even for all its headaches and for all its irritation. Um, it's so much better. Because when you say, well, you can't picture your life without your third kid because that's your life, that's not true. I know
Well,
intimately what it's like to only have two kids. I know intimately what it's like to only have one kid. I know intimately what it's like to for it just to be me and my wife. So I know exactly what it's like in all of those stages. Um,
right. So this is a failing that I think is just part of being human is again the interpretation of the definition of the vocabulary we use. So when I say, you know, I want to be happier more than I want to be sad, or I want to be in a pleasurable state of mind versus a, a pain stated one, or one that is, struggling. That doesn't mean that I'm pushing away or consciously avoiding things that I don't want to do, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
So like, you know, I don't like getting up at 6 o'clock every morning and going to work, but I also recognize that in that's part of the job, that's what needs to be done. And so in doing that, my annoyance at getting up at 6 is gone.
It's superseded
So
by something better. Yeah. No, I got you.
true, but then again, this is where I think, when they call it the law of facilitation, that I, kind of not talked myself into it, but I get up at the same time, even on the weekends, when I don't have to, because if I keep it regulated, it's easier. It actually becomes pleasurable. It's like I wake up now at around 5:30 without my alarm. I don't need to. I'm in a better mood naturally. Like I've become something I never thought I could become, which is a morning person. And
Hmm.
I think I've only been able to do that because I've identified, what it is that was making me angry and letting it go. And now, not just because you let something go that was making you angry or annoying doesn't mean you're going to be instinctually happier in the moment. But I do believe that it could lead to that, if that makes sense.
I got you. Yeah.
So I'm not saying that by taking what I do is I kind of look at it as more like a scientific experiment. I am my own best experiment. And when I take a step back, whenever I have an emotional reaction, it's not like I'm trying to be Data from Star Trek, but I look at it and I go, where did this come from? Why did it even occur? What other thoughts, what other associations and images and stuff that are popping up with it to help me kind of understand why it happened? Maybe there's something there I haven't dealt with yet, or that's been on my mind that I haven't either recognized or consciously looked at. Um, there's all these different things that you can do, I think, to understand yourself better. And for me, just having that understanding, that it's like an intimacy with myself,
Hmm.
leads me to such a stress-free life, honestly. Like, my wife and I, we still get at it at times, and there are times that, and again, she even says this as an autistic thing. When you present me, if we're having an argument, and it's usually because over a mistake in a vocabulary or connotation or inference,
Hmm.
when she clarifies it, I'm like, oh. And as soon as she makes that to where it makes sense to me, my anger's like instantaneously gone.
Hmm.
Like it doesn't linger. And she says that's not normal. And I'm like, that's I've heard that throughout my entire life, that that's not normal.
Well, I would be
And
I would be similar to you in that fashion.
so that's, to me, that can be normal, but I believe because of our society, I don't know if, again, if it's a time and place, the way we have it set up or whatever, but we're always caught up with these two huge mountains of weight on each shoulder, the past and the future.
Hmm.
We're like consumed with it. Are you saving enough for retirement? How is your health? If you don't work out now, you're not going to be healthy later, or what, it's like we're fed this idea of both the past and the future. And because of that, I don't think people are happy in the present. And honestly, I feel like that's something I've just gotten a little sliver of in the last
Hmm.
year, with how much, like, fundamentally my life has changed in so many ways in the last 2 years, not just because of COVID, but because of moving and career wise and marriage wise, family wise. And understanding that it's okay. It's okay to let go. It's okay for other people to be angry. Their anger doesn't affect my life. And if it does, I need to tell them, this is your anger. Like, if you're angry about something, uh, there's nothing I can do about that. Like, if you're angry because like, someone says they're angry at you because you teach your son X, Y, or Z. So what? That doesn't mean you're going to stop teaching your son X, Y, or Z. It just means that that person's angry. So what? It has nothing to do with you. It's like, if my boss, I can tell on days when he's irritated, even through text message. Like, I've gotten to know him pretty well.
Yeah.
And I just know that, like, when he sends me an irritated text or something like that, I know it has nothing to do with me. I know there are variables that he deals with that there is nothing that they can do anything about. If I am stuck, like I was stuck at a place for 3 hours yesterday waiting on a load, there's nothing I can do about that. He was pissed off all to hell. I exercised. I have a kettlebell in the truck. I did my leg workout. I texted my wife. I stretched, and I watched 2 episodes of The Sopranos. There's there's nothing I can do to speed up the guys loading my truck. Nothing.
Right.
So if my boss is stressed, a lot of people will take that. They'll personalize it.
Hmm.
And there's no reason to. And all it does is cause you stress. Where I'm like, I know there's nothing I can do about this. He's going to be stressed out anyway because I'm going to be running late, and there's nothing you can do. Like, why why be stressed? Why let that change or shatter your, I don't know what you want to call it, your zen? No,
I no, I hear what you're saying, and to be honest, I agree with you, and I think it's something that people let things that don't actually affect them bother them way too much,
exactly.
and
And
I completely agree with you.
again,
Um,
like I said, the whole conversation started on something. I did that exact thing. Bungie, on Destiny. I don't even fucking play it.
yeah, but it's a
But
good conversation.
it is a good conversation. So
Hmm.
I was looking for something because I all week I was trying to think of things that we could talk about tonight, and I was like, what are we going to talk about? Because I try not to focus on negative things anymore. I try not to, like, search out negative things. But this kept popping up on my Twitter feed, probably because I, touched someone's tweet that said something about it, and then Twitter uses its algorithm to try to feed me more negative stuff about it. That's what
Right.
they do. Um, and so we brought it up, but yeah, I only wanted to talk about it as kind of like something in the industry. But after, like, even during this conversation, I'm like, I realized it's got nothing to do with me. It's
Yeah.
not going to
At the end
affect
of
me after
yeah.
tonight. Tomorrow, I'm going to wake up. I'm going to have coffee. I'm going to go to the gym. I'm going to get my beard trimmed. I'm going to fucking play ESO for like 6 hours with my wife,
Nice.
and yeah, so I don't know. Like, I know what you're saying. It's not an easy thing, and I'm sure it's a lot easier for me to do it without having 3 kids under the age of 5, than someone who does. I realize that it is easier for me to do it as, like, a white male in America than like a black female in America who's living in a red line ghetto or something. Like, there are circumstances, that can make it very difficult, but I don't believe it's impossible. And I think we might have touched on it once, in that understanding your situation and accepting it in the moment. But if it's not a healthy situation, you are making active steps to get out of it, right?
Yeah. But
And that's kind
yeah.
of what I try to do a dozen times a day, literally.
Yeah, but and I think that's where my soliloquy about video games and don't let people make you feel bad. I'm saying not because
Oh
it's
yeah,
it's people out there saying that those people really have no effect me or how I raise my son or anything like that.
right.
I'm saying that because I've been told that by people who are in my life who do affect me and do affect the way my son is being raised and do affect my son. Um, and
Oh,
so and
okay,
so
that's
that's
different.
and so that's where that's where you say, well, what does that even have to do with you? Well, it does have
That's
something to do with me.
that. Oh yeah.
Um,
Okay, that clears it up a little bit, and that
yeah,
that is a different situation, because then at some point, maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like you're on the track to a confrontation.
Potentially. But that's where,
Yeah.
when I
I
was
mean, it
saying
depends
that,
on
it
them,
was, yeah,
but
right. Well,
yeah,
and but that's where I was kind of, telling the people out there, is, if there's people like that, in not and I brought up the WHO, for instance, and that was probably a poor
I
example because that's not what I meant. um
I get what you're saying now, though.
Right,
Now that
but
makes
but
more
it's like,
sense.
but if there's
Okay.
like people in your life, it's not like, well, then just, if they're negative people in your life, if they're negative about video games, don't have them in your life. I don't think that at all, because listen, there's
No,
more
no, yeah.
aspects of your life than just video games. At least there should be. Um,
Right.
but and so, like, once again, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. But
Right.
for those people that they may be good aspects in your life in one area, but not good aspects in this way, like, don't
Yeah.
let those people kick you when you're down, or
Yeah,
whatever
yeah,
kind
yeah,
of
yeah.
thing you want to say. So here's the thing. It is 10 after midnight my time.
Oh, fuck.
uh and
Oh my
on top of
god.
that, I have not eaten dinner yet. um
Alright.
I need so guys, just for those of you that have tuned in throughout this process and who have stayed with us this whole time, thank you so much. It's a great conversation.
Wait,
As I'm sorry, go
hold
ahead.
on. Sorry. There are people still watching us?
Well, two people. I mean,
Oh, still, that's fucking amazing. I didn't even
um,
think that many people were watching us at this point.
but no, thank you guys for
Yeah,
sticking
dude.
around. If you guys have any interesting topics that you'd like to talk about, leave them in the comments section. Join the Discord that's in the description. Let us
Oh
know.
yeah.
And then if you're an ESO player and you want more information about ESO, you should check out Verdict of Odin's channel. This guy over here. If you are interested in single player games, modding Fallout, modding Skyrim, anything like that, come subscribe to my channel. I'll try to help you whenever I can. But yeah, we try to do these on Friday, and to call it a podcast would be extremely generous because, as you can see, we're not all that organized or have segments or anything like that.
No
Think
organization.
of it this way: it's just two buddies getting a drink and talking, and you guys can participate.
Yeah,
That's
that's
what it is.
basically it.
So thank you guys once again for coming by, and we will see you the next time. And
Yeah.
for those of you who are subscribed to my channel, hopefully I'll be streaming some Skyrim this weekend. So hopefully I'll see you guys there. But anyways, thank you guys again, and I'll see you the next one. And we're out.